They released him back into the public. As I understand it, I want to get to the bottom of that report. Why was he not removed back to Sierra Leone when the Trump administration held him in 2018 and 2019? That is a critical question that I have in terms of trying to define responsibility, if all of this is just a blame game that we're engaged in. It would be far more meaningful for us to be talking about comprehensive immigration reform. I think that's what Americans and Virginians are looking to Congress for, not to be scrutinizing and demonizing particular cities or counties around the country, which does not strike me as a very productive exercise. Nonetheless, I'm delighted to hear from all of our witnesses here, and I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record, and we'll now hear from today's witnesses. We have with us a young woman who was victimized by these sanctions, her bachelor 87. We have the Honorable Stephen Descano, who serves as a Commonwealth's attorney for Fairfax County, Virginia. He served in this role since January of 2020. Mr. Descano earned his undergraduate degree from West Point and his JD from Temple University. Mr. Sean Kennedy is president of Virginians for Safe Communities, a public safety and victims' rights advocacy nonprofit, and sits on the Fairfax County Criminal Justice Advisory Board as an appointee of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. He's a graduate of the University of California at Berkeley and earned a master's degree in history from the University of Cambridge. Professor Jane Stover is a professor at the University of California Irvine School of Law, where she directs the Domestic Violence Clinic and the UCI Initiative to End Family Violence. Professor Stover earned a bachelor's degree in English from the University of Kansas in 2000. She completed her JD at Harvard in 2003 and earned an LLM from Georgetown University in 2008. Mr. David Beer is the Director of Immigration Studies at the Cato Institute. He has a BA in Political Science from Grove City College in Pennsylvania. We have with us the Honorable Jason Mayores, who served as Virginia Attorney General from 2021 to 2025 and previously served in the House of Delegates. He earned a bachelor's degree in business administration from James Madison University in 1998 and earned his JD from the College of William and Mary in 2005. I want to welcome all of today's witnesses, thank them for appearing, and we'll begin by swearing you in. Would you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge and information and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you, and you may be seated. We know that your written testimony will be entered in the record in its entirety. Accordingly, I will ask that you summarize your testimony in 5 minutes, and we'll begin with Sheriff Kincaid.
Good morning. Chairman McClintock, Ranking Member Jayapal, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Stacey Ann Kincaid, and I am the Sheriff of Fairfax County, Virginia. I was sworn in as a deputy sheriff in 1987, and I worked my way through the ranks of my agency, serving in every division with distinction. After achieving the rank of captain, I ran for sheriff in 2013 and have since been reelected 3 times with overwhelming majorities. As sheriff, it's been an honor to serve Fairfax County. The safety and security of Fairfax County has been my absolute priority for the past 38 years. I entered law enforcement to serve my community and to help protect the vulnerable. I believe all those that commit crimes should be held accountable, and I sympathize with all victims of crimes. I am proud of the role my agency plays in the Fairfax County criminal justice system by ensuring the safe and orderly administration of justice. Simply put, the justice system comes to a halt without Fairfax County Sheriff's Office. We are tasked with serving every document issued by our court system, including protective orders and subpoenas. We are responsible for providing security to a courthouse and ensuring the safety of hundreds of thousands of courthouse visitors every year, including judges, victims, and witnesses. We operate a secure and humane adult detention center and we hold certifications from the American Correctional Association, the Virginia Law Enforcement Professional Standards Commission, the Virginia Department of Corrections, and the National Commission on Correctional Health Care. In addition to our accreditation, I am proud of the groundbreaking, nationally recognized programs that run daily in my jail. These efforts are critical to reducing recidivism and making our communities safer. The functions of my agency are carried out daily to ensure the safe and orderly administration of justice in Fairfax County. My agency is not staffed for, budgeted for, or mandated to perform the duties of the federal government. My operating budget is approved by state and local government and is allotted specifically to carry out state and local mandated functions, maintaining a safe and secure detention center, serving civil process, and ensuring the safety of the courthouse. It is simply not the job of the Fairfax County Sheriff's Office to engage in federal immigration enforcement. Despite this, we work with ICE in significant ways. We treat them like every other law enforcement agency we interact with. They are allowed into our facility at any time. They are notified of every undocumented immigrant booked into our jail, and they know their location. If there's an individual they want to take custody of, they can do so by obtaining a judicial warrant, calling to ask when the individual will be released, tracking the individual's court date, or taking custody of the individual up to 5 days prior to their release. When ICE does call, we even coordinate high-risk transfers with ICE to ensure their safety. We have no problem with ICE conducting its lawful business, but it is their business to conduct, not ours. Fairfax County is one of the top 50 most diverse counties in the entire nation. Over 30% of Fairfax County's population is foreign-born, and over 40% speaks a language other than English at home. I am the sheriff for each one of these residents of Fairfax County, no matter their national origin, native language, and citizenship status. Ensuring trust between the community and my agency is a key component of effective law enforcement. To encourage all victims to put their faith in law enforcement and report crimes, a clear separation between local law enforcement and federal immigration authorities is of vital importance. Local law enforcement must offer a safe place for victims and witnesses to cooperate without fear of consequences. This is the only way to hold violators accountable of the law. Any violent crime or crime against children is a tragedy. Unfortunately, we live in a time when such tragedies are used for political gain. It is easy to point fingers at a time of sadness and crisis and to look for blame for a terrible outcome. Even when everyone in the criminal justice system does their job, terrible people will do terrible things. We are doing our job by following the law and will continue to do so. Hopefully, the other agencies involved will do their jobs as well. I look forward to continuing this conversation with anyone who wishes to find real solutions devoid of politics. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Descano.
Chairman McClintock, Ranking Member Jayapal, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Raskin, and distinguished members of this subcommittee. As a West Point graduate, federal prosecutor, and now the Commonwealth's attorney for Fairfax County, Virginia, I have devoted my life to public service and public safety. I was the first in my family to graduate from college, and I was inspired by West Point's credo of providing a lifetime of selfless service to the nation. I was first elected as Commonwealth's attorney in 2019 on a promise to adopt smart on-crime policies that prioritize the prosecution of violent crime. I'm proud of what we have accomplished. Fairfax County is one of the safest large communities anywhere in the country. The public safety of Fairfax County motivates all my work. Our office has successfully prosecuted thousands of cases, including high-profile murders, sexual assaults, and other serious offenses. We've worked with our law enforcement partners to more effectively prosecute gun crimes. We expanded a diversion program for struggling veterans, and we spearheaded bipartisan statewide reforms to better protect child victims and witnesses in partnership with a Republican governor. Even in safe communities, though, crime does happen, like the tragic murder of Stephanie Minter, whose mother, Cheryl, is here today. Ms. Minter, I am deeply sorry for your loss. And I say that not only as a prosecutor, but as a parent of a daughter. I am sorry for what you are having to endure. And I promise that my office is doing everything we can to prosecute the man responsible. I've been asked to testify today about my office's policies. I welcome any conversation about how to reduce and prevent violence. Unfortunately, I expect some will instead promote a false narrative that gets us no closer to real solutions that Americans deserve. Let me be absolutely clear. My office does not provide sanctuary or safe harbor to undocumented immigrants. In fact, we routinely prosecute immigrants who commit crimes, and we will continue to do so. Our approach to prosecution of crime has helped make Fairfax County one of the safest jurisdictions of its size in the country. Last year, we had far fewer homicides than in almost any other major jurisdiction in the United States, including in states that many members of this subcommittee represent. Serious violent crime in Fairfax County is also lower than that of most other large jurisdictions. And Fairfax residents know it's safe. A Washington Post poll found that 94% of Northern Virginia residents reported feeling safe from crime in their neighborhood. And the citizens of Fairfax County have weighed in by re-electing me with 77% of the vote. My office also works with our federal partners to prosecute crimes. And like many state and local prosecutors, my office has a policy of not assisting ICE with federal civil immigration enforcement. We do not have the budget or personnel to enforce federal civil immigration law, and it is simply not our job. We handle 15,000 criminal cases each year, with just 52 full-time attorneys and a limited budget. Our policy of not diverting our resources to federal immigration enforcement also makes our communities safer. 3 in 10 residents in Fairfax County are immigrants. When crimes occur, we need victims and witnesses, including members of our immigrant communities, to report those crimes and come to court to testify. If victims and witnesses believe my office will report them or their neighbors to ICE, they will not trust us, and they will not provide the testimony we need to obtain convictions and get justice. It is justice that my office is now seeking by prosecuting the defendant Abdul Jallo in the tragic murder of Stephanie Minter. The system failed Miss Minter, and we should all look for ways we can prevent tragedies like this in the future. That starts with understanding the facts. The defendant was well known by ICE as early as 2018, when ICE held him in custody for nearly 2 years during the first Trump administration, only to release him into the community. After that, my office worked closely with law enforcement to prosecute him and obtain convictions for his crime wherever possible, and despite challenges in those cases. We are fully committed to holding the defendant accountable in this case. As a local prosecutor, I will continue to focus on my job prosecuting defendants who commit crimes in Fairfax County. In carrying out that role, my office makes case decisions based on the law, the evidence in the case, the interests of the victim, and in service of seeking justice and keeping our community safe. Thank you for having me, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll next hear from the former Attorney General of the state of Virginia, the Honorable Jason Miyares.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the subcommittee. Before I say anything else, I want to acknowledge the woman seated with us today, Ms. Cheryl Minter, the mother of Stephanie. She has agreed to share her story with this committee, and there is no one braver in this room. I will let her speak to what she has lost. But what I want to give you is the context, because what happened to Stephanie did not have to happen in this vacuum. Now, I come to the immigration issue personally. My mother fled communist Cuba, literally penniless and homeless, and not knowing where her next meal was going to come from. She came to this country legally, stood in line, filled out the forms, and did everything the right way because she believed in the rule of law and the promise of America. She left behind everything because she knew she wanted to come here the right way. That's what legal immigration looks like. I'm the son of a legal immigrant. I believe in immigration deeply. But what I do not believe in, what I cannot accept, is a system that extends preferential treatment to those who break our laws at the direct expense of the American citizens whose laws are supposed to protect. And in Fairfax County, Virginia, that is precisely what happened. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. Cheryl will tell you about Stephanie. But members of this committee, I want you to understand that Stephanie Minter is not an isolated tragedy. She is the most recent and visible name in a documented and ongoing pattern of preventable crimes, a pattern with a single common cause, the sanctuary policies of Fairfax County. In December 2025, a man was shot and killed inside his own home in Reston one day after Marvin Fernando Morales Ortez, a criminal illegal alien from El Salvador, was released from jail despite an active ICE detainer. He had prior arrest for aggravated assault of a police officer. Fairfax refused to hold him. He killed a man the very next day. A single phone call from Fairfax to ICE would have saved this man's life. In November 2024, a woman was raped on a hiking trail in Herndon, Virginia, just days after her attacker was released from jail following a felony assault charge reduction made without ever consulting the police. The ICE detainer was ignored. She became the next victim. A 4-year-old girl was nearly abducted in the middle of the night by an illegal alien who broke into her bedroom. Charges were reduced progressively over 18 months down to a misdemeanor, then dropped entirely. In July 2024, 2 illegal aliens stabbed a man to death at a park in Oakton. ICE had lodged multiple detainers on one of the suspects that Fairfax County had refused to honor. He was released back into the community. Then he killed. In the last several weeks, girls as young as 13 were groped repeatedly in the hallways of a Fairfax County high school by an illegal alien enrolled as a student at age 19. ICE asked that he be held. Fairfax refused. Same county, same prosecutor, same policy, over and over again. Members, this is not incompetence. This is not coincidence. This is policy. Commonwealth's Attorney Descano publishes it on his own website. His office's formal written policy states that prosecutors shall, whenever possible, make charging and plea decisions that, quote, limit or avoid immigration consequences. That's not prosecutorial discretion. That is discrimination against American citizens in favor of those here illegally who commit additional crime. That is why the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund petitioned the Department of Justice, which early this month has opened a civil rights investigation into Mr. Descano's office, arguing that his policies violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Let me be clear about the law. Immigration is not a shared power with states. It belongs exclusively to the federal government. And federal law expressly prohibits state and local governments from restricting communication with federal immigration authorities. Fairfax County's policies do exactly that. This is not non-cooperation. This is a deliberate choice to put a violent criminal back on the street. We know what works because Virginia proved it under Governor Glenn Youngkin. His Executive Order 47 established a state immigration task force. Within 8 weeks, over 130 gang members were picked up, including the East Coast leader of MS-13 living freely in Prince William County. He was captured. Virginia was called the national model. Our new governor, Spanberger, dismantled it. Her first day in office, she signed Executive Order 1, ending state cooperation with ICE just 19 days before Stephanie Minter was killed. She now has a bill on her desk that would prohibit every jurisdiction in Virginia from cooperating with ICE. I think we all know what she will do. Government's first and most fundamental duty is to protect the people it governs. Sanctuary policies represent a catastrophic and willful failure of that duty. My mother came to this country because she believed the law would protect her. Cheryl Minter believed the same thing. Stephanie Minter deserved the same thing. And Virginians are paying the price. I'm asking this committee to make this stop. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I welcome the committee's questions.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll next hear from Professor Stover.
Chairman, Ranking Member, and distinguished members, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Jane Stover, and I'm a law professor at the University of California, Irvine School of Law, having first taught at Georgetown and American, directing domestic violence clinics for over 20 years now. Today's hearing was prompted by an unthinkable tragedy, and I extend my deepest condolences to Ms. Cheryl Minter for the loss of her daughter, Stephanie Minter. All victims deserve safety and justice, and many have been failed by the systems that purport to help them. I'll be direct, though. Focusing on immigration enforcement as the solution to violence against women is rooted in false narratives, not facts. Contrary to the premise of this hearing, sanctuary policies aren't obstacles to public safety. They're essential to it. Study after study, including by criminologist Charis Kubrin, shows that immigrants commit fewer crimes. And law enforcement leaders have warned that when survivors fear the police, crimes go unreported and communities become less safe. As co-chair of my county's domestic violence death review team, I can assure you, preventing abuse prevents fatalities. Policies that allow survivors to seek help without fear, to call the police without fear, save lives and improve community safety. I urge this committee to focus on the real solutions to preventing and responding to violence against women, because I see my clients' safety further jeopardized now. Immigrant women in the United States face a lifetime risk of domestic violence as high as 49.8%. That's 3 times the national average. And 60% of immigrant women married to U.S. citizens experience immigration-related abuse. Survivors need protection but face a catch-22, remain in danger or risk deportation. Immigration enforcement has exponentially increased as Congress has allocated $170 billion and plans to add $70 billion more. ICE agents have daily arrest targets and are now empowered to stop, arrest, and detain people on the basis of race, language, location, and employment. And immigrant survivors are being swept up. In this context, the Alliance for Immigrant Survivors surveyed over 170 advocates and attorneys nationwide. Their findings are alarming. Over 3/4 of immigrant survivors have concerns about contacting the police. 70% fear attending any court hearings, and half ultimately chose not to contact the police or to go to court for abuse. In Virginia, Fairfax County law enforcement report rising numbers of victims withdrawing complaints. Survivors are avoiding courthouses, food banks, prenatal care, and shelters due to ICE raids, and are arranging for third parties to take custody of their children should they be deported. At the same time, legal protections are being dismantled. Over 30 years ago, Congress enshrined protections for immigrants in the Violence Against Women Act with bipartisan support, and then passed the Victims of Trafficking and Violence Protection Act. But today, survivors with pending and even approved petitions are being detained and removed. USCIS backlogs of VAWA self-petitions and life-saving TNU visas compound the crisis, with U visas taking over a decade to grant now. One of my clients married a US citizen, but fled life-threatening abuse during pregnancy, only to be ordered removed unless she could prove successful adjudication of her VAWA self-petition in 1 month's time. But USCIS processing times are over 4 years currently. We expedited her case and await the decision on appeal. She is not the danger this administration or this hearing purport to address, yet she's been made a target, and I shudder to think what would happen if she didn't have an attorney. To seriously address crime victim safety, I respectfully urge Congress to 1, reject Section 287G agreements, which harmfully entangle local police with federal immigration enforcement, to prohibit enforcement actions at courthouses, abuse shelters, and medical facilities, the places we want people to seek help. 3, to bar ICE from detaining or removing individuals with pending survivor-based claims, as was Congress's original intent. 4, to restore VAWA, U, and T visa protections and public benefits, to fund USCIS staffing, and increase the annual caps. Finally, in contrast to the hundreds of billions of dollars for immigration enforcement, $200 million in federal victim services grants is sitting unspent, which should be immediately distributed to provide life-saving services to survivors in those organizations, including in Virginia. Please stay focused on survivor safety and act with urgency to restore and strengthen vital safeguards. Thank you.
Thank you. Next chair for Mr. Beer.
Chairman McClintock, Ranking Member Jayapal, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. For half a century, the Cato Institute's research has shown that people, whatever their ancestry, background, or birthplace, can thrive in a free society. Our research finds that immigrants, legal and illegal, work at higher rates, generate more income and taxes, and have reduced the national debt by $14.5 trillion over the last 30 years. Immigrants improve public safety by reducing violent crime rates, meaning that you are less likely to become a victim. Fairfax highlights this reality. About half the county's residents are immigrants or children of immigrants. Its household income is double the national average. Its murder rate is less than half the average. If illegal immigrants in Fairfax were their own city, they'd have a lower homicide rate than 90% of America's largest cities and lower than the country's homicide rate overall. Nationwide, illegal immigrants are half as likely to commit serious crimes for which they're serving time as US-born Americans. Despite all this, Congress refuses to allow most would-be immigrants to come legally, which leads to illegal immigration. Just 3% of all the people seeking permanent legal status in the United States were approved in 2024. That was before the current administration banned a majority of the legal immigrants previously allowed to come, including half of all the spouses of U.S. citizens. It has cut legal immigration twice as much as it has cut illegal immigration. At the same time, it terminated legal status for over 2 million immigrants who were already here, creating 4 times as many illegal immigrants as it has deported. America's cities must manage the fallout from this sabotaged system. Many have decided not to volunteer their cops, jails, and resources to DHS. DHS doesn't like that. But under our Constitution, cities and states don't take orders from the feds. And thank James Madison for that. Because we all know we wouldn't want the feds to dictate environmental policy, gun policy, or COVID policy to the states. If you want Fairfax to change its policies, you gotta convince them. The first step would be to give up on the mass deportation fantasy. About 1 in 5 Fairfax residents is someone who could be deported or who lives with them. It would destroy neighborhoods, rip Americans away from their spouses, parents, friends, families, customers, employees, employers, nurses, nannies, and teachers. Let me be clear. Non-citizens who harm Americans should be arrested, convicted, and deported. I think cities can help with that, but deportation is DHS's job. Indeed, you all passed the Laken-Riley Act in 2025 to require DHS to immediately take custody of people charged with violence or theft. DHS is ignoring that law. It has deprioritized threats to focus on easy targets. They aren't tracking down the serious criminal fugitives like the monster who killed Stephanie Minter. Instead, DHS agents are racially profiling Americans at Home Depots, arresting spouses of U.S. citizens at green card interviews, beating parents of U.S. Marines and dragging legal immigrants and U.S. citizens from their homes without warrants. Only 6% of ICE arrests have a violent criminal conviction. ICE has arrested 150,000 people who have no criminal convictions or even charges, and we know it's not because they got everyone with a serious record. Stephanie's case and many others prove that. It's because they care about, as one ICE agent put it, quantity over quality. How many Stephanies will get murdered before DHS follows the law and prioritizes serious criminals? How many? Most Americans don't want to wait for the answer. They want to pause the mass deportation fantasy and focus on public safety. That's the only policy that will defend our safety, our prosperity, and our freedom. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairman, Ranking Member, and members of this committee. Thank you for inviting me to testify. My name is Sean Kennedy, President of Virginians for Safe Communities, a Fairfax-based public safety and victims' rights advocacy group, and I'm an appointed member of the Fairfax County Criminal Justice Advisory Board. I'm going to get straight to the point. Anyone who is in the United States without legal status, any violent criminal, should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and if they don't have legal status, they should be deported. Full stop. Those aren't my words. That was Governor Abigail Spanberger yesterday. But in Fairfax County, neither of those things are happening. First, Fairfax Chief Prosecutor Steve Descano does not prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. In fact, one of his former prosecutors told me, every time I hear Descano say community values, I cringe because we should be following the law, not his values. In fact, he openly flouts the law, ordering his prosecutors to seek lighter sentences for violent criminals and sex offenders, including murderers and child rapists. Second, Mr. Descano boasts that he chooses which charges to bring and what sentences to seek based on who the offender is. Being illegally present earns an offender preferential treatment, but that grace is not afforded to those who need it the most, something that the professor just spoke about, victims. And make no mistake, the vast majority of criminal aliens victims are themselves immigrants. They too deserve justice. They too deserve safety. They too deserve dignity. But Mr. Descano has shown a callous disregard for them and their rights, our laws, and our public safety. That is wrong and that is illegal, and it has appalling consequences. At 4 o'clock in the morning on June 15th, 2023, a mother woke to the screams of her 4-year-old girl from the next room. A man had broken in through the bedroom window and carried off the toddler, committing burglary with the intent to rape, according to the police. He was well known to the police and Mr. Descano. He was Hiram Bacadeno Rodriguez, a Honduran national. In 2021, 2 years before, Bacadeno Rodriguez was arrested for multiple incidents of indecent liberties with a child. Each of the 3 counts carried up to 10 years in prison under Virginia law. But Mr. Descano, who directs his prosecutors to avoid immigration consequences, reduced the charges. Despite committing a break-in while awaiting sentencing, Descano agreed to a 6-month sentence for prior crimes. He was quickly arrested again for burglary to commit a felony, punishable by 20 years, but that was reduced to property damage. More arrests, probation violations, and drop charges followed. He walked free and went fugitive. In 18 months, Bacadeno Rodriguez racked up 5 arrests and 23 charges, requiring him to spend the rest of his life in the Virginia Department of Corrections. But Mr. Descano's policies prohibited that. It stated that his deputies must make plea officers that avoid the legislatively mandated minimum jail sentence. So a criminal alien was free to abduct a sleeping little girl. Somehow this parent's worst nightmare, in the words of Judge Randy Bellows, got worse when Mr. Descano gave the kidnapper a plea deal for less than 2 years in prison. An outraged Judge Bellows rejected the plea agreement, saying the only way to protect the community is a lengthy period of incarceration. When the same deal came before Judge Susan J. Stoney the next year, she too was incredulous. The court is concerned about the severity of the crime, the fact that the defendant's criminal history indicates a record of other involvement with minors, and that the potential sentence here in this case is too lenient. The court has grave concern in the interest of public safety. In a vindictive and petty move, Mr. Descano then dropped all of the charges. The little girl's family was beside themselves. He was set to be released within hours. Denied justice by the same man charged with protecting the innocent, their little girl, and the public, that family had to act. The little girl's grandmother, Natalie, called the ICE hotline and said, "I gave them all the information I had to the person on the other end. When ICE arrested him, as he walked out, she said, it was a sigh of relief." According to the girl's mother, Christy, God protected my little girl, but who is going to protect the next one? Certainly not Mr. Descano. And sadly, since he has become Commonwealth's attorney, this case is not the exception. It is the rule. Under Mr. Descano, it is policy. Fairfax's chief prosecutor has chosen to sacrifice victims on the altar of ideology. Hundreds, if not thousands, of violent and sex crimes should never have happened if Mr. Descano followed the law, not his values. In shielding criminal aliens, Mr. Descano shows a depraved indifference to human suffering. That is not compassion. It is cruelty. That is not compassion. It is cruelty. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll finally hear from Ms. Cheryl Minter.
Good morning to the members of the, thank you. Good morning to the members of the committee. I appreciate you granting me the time and space to speak. Thank you for your attendance. My name is Cheryl Minter. I am the mother of Stephanie Nicole Minter. I would like to open today's subject, Stephanie Nicole Minter, with a poem. Every good painting will take a million strokes. To make a good song, you have to go mining to find the perfect notes. And a castle is created stone by stone with patience and care, because great leaps come with small steps and time. This poem comes from my favorite coffee cup, gifted to me by Stephanie. We would share a cup of coffee during the early mornings We butted heads like every mother and daughter, but wanted to actively take steps together to make our relationship better. We would share stories, memories, laughter, thoughts of the future, and more. This is something I will never get to experience again because of the failures of our justice system. Stephanie was my daughter, my heart. She was a loving mother, a daughter, sister, an auntie, a friend, a mentor. She believed in God. She cared for people. She showed up for others, even when she was tired. Stephanie was my memory, since mine isn't that great anymore. She always knew the right Bible verse for any situation, always smiling, always joyful, always loved life, even through the bad times. Stephanie was a woman who faced many battles in life. She always came out the other side of tough times with that bright smile on her face. That same smile is something I will never be able to see again. A smile the world will never bear witness to again. On February 4th, 2026, I woke up to the worst call a parent can ever receive. My daughter was gone, taken in the most horrific way, while simply waiting for a bus in Fairfax County on the night of February 23rd, 2026. No mother should have to stand here and say these words. No family should have to bury their child like this. Stephanie's life mattered. Her voice mattered. Her future mattered. And today I stand here because her life was taken in a way that should have never happened. The man who took my daughter's life should not have been free to walk the streets. He had been picked up many times. He was known. There were warnings. There were emails sent saying he was a danger, and still he was released. I am not here for politics. I am here for accountability. I am here because a system failed my daughter. If not for these failures, I could be sharing a cup of coffee with Stephanie this morning rather than speaking with you all today. When policies protect people who are a known threat, innocent lives are put at risk. When warnings are ignored, families like mine pay the price. This is not just about Stephanie. This is about every mother, every parent, every child, every person who waits at a bus stop, walks home, or goes to work, trusting they will be safe. We cannot ignore this. We cannot look away. Compassion should never come at the cost of public safety. Care for one group should not mean danger for another. We can be a community that is both caring and responsible. We can have policies that protect people and also keep our streets safe. But that means we must act. We must listen when there are warnings. We must take threats seriously. We must make sure that people who are dangerous are not released back into our neighborhoods. I will carry my daughter's name for the rest of my life. I will carry her memory, but I should not have to carry this pain because of a preventable failure. Stephanie deserved to come home that day. She deserved to watch her child grow. She deserved more time. I am asking you, please do not let her story be ignored. Do not let another family stand where I am standing. Make changes, take responsibility, protect your community, because no mother should ever have to wake up to this nightmare. I'd like to read from Psalms 28. Give them the punishments they so richly deserve. Measure it out in proportion to their wickedness. Pay them back for all their evil deeds. Give them a taste of what they have done to others. They care nothing for what the Lord has done or for what his hands have made. So he will tear them down, and they will never be rebuilt. Praise the Lord, for he has heard my cry for mercy. The Lord is my strength and my shield. I trust him with all my heart. He helps me, and my heart is filled with joy. I burst out in songs of thanksgiving. The Lord gives his people strength, for he is a safe fortress for his anointed king. Save your people, bless Israel, your special possession, lead them like a shepherd, and carry them in your arms forever. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to 5-minute questions from committee members, and we'll start with Sheriff Nails.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, Ms. Minter, what a very story. Stephanie, the numerous pictures we saw, beautiful. I apologize for the individuals that have held onto these irresponsible policies, costing the lives of many, many innocent Americans. So I apologize. Mr. Kennedy, I appreciate your passion. You're right on target. Mr. Descano, well, Ms. Sheriff Kincaid, thank you for your service. Mr. Descano, I consider you a disgrace. I yield the rest of my balance of my time to my colleague, Mr. Klein.
I thank the gentleman, and I thank the chairman for allowing me to sit on this panel today. I represent the vast majority of Virginia citizens who stand with you, Ms. Minter, and who are so sorry for the tragedy that occurred. And our prayers are with you and with your daughter, who is in heaven looking down on this right now. And, you know, I heard your apology, Mr. Descano. I think the public would like to hear your resignation. Let me ask you, when Abdul Jala is released, will you honor an ICE detainer?
Sir, my office is a prosecuting office. We don't receive ICE detainers. That's not our business.
Will you, Sheriff Kincaid, will you honor the ICE detainer?
Well, thank you for that question. And I would certainly hope that this case would be prosecuted and that justice would be served. Certainly when it comes to Mr. Jala, there hasn't been ICE detainers with the exception of one time in 2018, which we turned him over to ICE, and then the second time, which we had to release him to a facility. Each other time he's been in my custody, there's been no detainers.
If one comes, will you honor it?
As long as I have the authority to do so, and ICE knows what our policy is.
Then yes?
If I'm given a judicial warrant, yes.
That's different.
Well, it's what gives me the authority to detain somebody when I receive a court order from a judge mandating someone's release. I would also hope that ICE would know when Mr. Jala is getting released so that they would be able to come and pick him up. And we do plan, should he get convicted, we do plan on taking him, driving him down to the Department of Corrections.
All right. Well, Mr. Descano, your policy tells prosecutors to give lighter treatment to defendants based on their immigration status. Isn't that just discrimination with a sympathetic face? And why are you protecting criminal illegal aliens more than the people of Fairfax County, the citizens?
Well, first of all, sir, I think there's two things wrong with it in the question that you asked me. We're not protecting undocumented individuals. As a matter of fact, we prosecute people who commit crimes in Fairfax County regardless of their status. So the idea that we don't do that is simply wrong. Our policies simply maintain that our role is to prosecute Virginia crime. That's what we do. ICE's role is to do federal civil immigration enforcement.
Mr. Miyares, you disagree with that?
Fundamentally, he has a written policy to that effect. He is conflating two different issues. He's simply saying, well, I prosecute all crimes. At the same time, he has a written policy saying that illegal immigrants are going to be treated and given preferential treatment differently from American citizens. On one hand, he sits in front of this committee and says, we don't follow sanctuary policies. At the same time, he openly admits he conducts himself in a manner in which he does not cooperate with federal immigration authorities. That's the very definition of sanctuary policies. No, I fundamentally disagree with his assessment. There are 95 counties in Virginia, Congressman. Only one county with one prosecutor has a written policy saying we're going to treat illegal immigrants differently than American citizens. It is Mr. Descano to my left, period, full stop.
Well, I know that when ICE does work with localities, the system can work. I worked in the Harrisonburg-Rockingham Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. They had a 287G agreement with ICE. And when individuals who were prosecuted, who were here illegally, eventually served their sentences, they were met by ICE. They were retrieved by ICE and returned to their countries of origin. The people of Rockingham and Harrisonburg benefited from that policy because the streets were safer, and people who committed crimes were not returned to the communities that they threatened prior to their arrest. So, the people who are here in Fairfax, from Fairfax, stand and answer the ranking member's question about, well, I've run out of time, so I hope I can get some more time because people who are working hard in Fairfax County deserve to not just feel safe, as the ranking member indicated, but actually are safe.
The gentleman's time has expired. Ms. Jayapal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Descano, there's been a lot said, so I just want to ask you a few yes or no questions. Your office works with DHS regularly on criminal issues, not civil immigration enforcement. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And if DHS came to you with a judicial warrant to take someone in your custody, would you comply?
Well, we don't hold people in custody, but we have worked with that department for criminal cases before, and we will continue to do so.
And do you arrest, prosecute, convict, and incarcerate individuals accused of crimes regardless of immigration status?
Absolutely.
I just want to reiterate a couple of points. Again, yes or no. Is the crime rate in Fairfax County one of the lowest in the country?
Yes.
And is Fairfax County rated among the safest jurisdictions of its size by the Major City Chiefs Association?
Yes.
So given the ramp up of illegal mass detentions and the attacks on legal immigration that Mr. Beer and others have spoken about, how has that played out on the ground for you? Are people in immigrant communities, communities of color, feeling safe to come forward and report crimes, testify?
No, they're absolutely not. And that, in fact, makes my job as a local prosecutor much harder. As I'm sure you're aware, when we do cases, we have to rely on the evidence, and most of the time that evidence is through victim and witness testimony. We want members of our community to come to court, but when they're scared, as they currently are becoming more and more scared with what ICE is doing, they are more reluctant to come to court. And when we don't have witnesses, that means, unfortunately, bad guys hit the streets again. And as a prosecutor, that's what I don't want. That's what my trust policy is trying to avoid.
Thank you. Professor Stover, I want to turn to you. Immigrant women experience domestic violence at rates nearly 3 times the national average and are often among the most vulnerable because the fear of deportation can keep them trapped in these abusive situations. I've done a lot of work on this issue, as you know. In your work, you've written about the importance of trust between immigrant communities and local law enforcement. When immigrant communities know that calling 911 will not result in deportation for themselves or a family member, they're more willing to report and help law enforcement solve crimes. Can you discuss how local police working too closely with ICE can undermine that trust, and whether this administration's aggressive immigration policies are making it harder for domestic violence survivors to come forward and seek help?
Yes, and thank you for your work on this area. It absolutely undermines trust. When you have law enforcement and that the line between law enforcement and immigration enforcement blurred, when you call the police, you don't know when they show up at your door, are they there to help or to deport you? And so it's absolutely created a chilling effect and really suppressed people coming forward to get help, which then causes greater danger for the broader community. I'll identify just one survivor quote from a survivor reaching out to a local service provider that said her abuser would tell her, quote, "Look at the TV," referring to the coverage of immigration raids and the rhetoric about immigrants, to, quote, "see how no one cared about her." Mm-hmm. This is really creating a very significant chilling effect for abuse survivors and continuing to escalate abuse.
I'm hearing a lot about that from survivors in my own district. Mr. Beer, I want to thank you for all of your research on Trump's attacks on the legal immigration system. He, of course, said he was going to go after the worst of the worst, and that is clearly not what is happening. Republicans want to force states and localities to comply with these mass deportation policies, and they want to threaten to cut billions in law enforcement, public safety, and national security funding to the jurisdictions that refuse to comply. Can the federal government force states and localities to do the federal government's job? Question number one. Question number two, why is it not in the interest of the public and public safety to force local jurisdictions to do this?
Well, first of all, the 10th Amendment puts the firewall in place. We have a system of federalism. The Supreme Court has been quite clear on this. You cannot force state and local governments to do what you want. Congress's powers are limited. You can order the federal agencies to do whatever you want. You cannot, as long as it comports with the Constitution, of course, but you cannot tell the states and local governments what to do. And you also cannot use your federal grant-making authority as a backdoor to coerce states into doing what they want. The Republicans and certainly myself and the Cato Institute were quite happy in the Obamacare decision where they said you can't force Medicaid expansion on states by denying all Medicaid to states that don't cooperate. And so that was a protection of federalism, and we should continue and defend the federalist system of government from these attacks.
Expired. Mr. Biggs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, I thank specifically Ms. Minter for being here today. It takes a great deal of courage. I appreciate your being here. I thought it was an interesting thing when we heard that Americans care about their microeconomy. But you know what they really care about? Because if you have money and you're unsafe, it's like you don't have money. You need to be safe. That's what Americans really care about. Number one, you need to be safe. Americans want to be safe. And I thought it was interesting too when the ranking member said, hey, if stand up here, if you're if in the gallery, if you support immigrants so that they're able to make 911 calls. I thought that was interesting. Everybody stood up and then a few sat down. But you know who can't stand up today? You know who's not here today? The victims of the crimes of those individuals that were released into the community, knowing that they had a propensity to commit these types of crimes. They're not here to answer for themselves. That's why we have, ostensibly, that's why you have the police agencies. So I thought I would tell you, you know who's not here? Ms. Minter's wonderful daughter, Stephanie. She's not here because Abdul Jala was released. The victim of Malden Annabel Guzman, who was killed, is not here. The victim of Marvin Fernando Morales Ortiz is not here. He's killed. He's killed, released by these individuals. Wilmer Osmani Ramos Giron, the victim of his strangulation, is not here. The victim of Jorge Armando Melendez Gonzalez, charged 19 times violent and firearm-related offenses, not here. The victims cannot be here. Victim of Hiram Bacadeno Rodriguez. The judge found what Mr. Descano's office's plea agreement was so offensive, they rejected them. Then a second judge rejected the plea offer. Victims there, they're not here today. Dennis Humberto Navarrete Romero, again, and we could go on, and we could name these victims who are not here because of the policies of this Fairfax County office. That I'm going to yield 2 minutes, the last 2 minutes, to my friend from Virginia, Mr. Klein.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. I want to get back to this idea that Fairfax is somehow a standout for keeping crime low. In fact, they're ranked number 3 nationally by release volume out of sanctuary strongholds across the country that routinely disregard detention requests from ICE. So behind Santa Clara County's main pretrial holding facility in California and Chicago's Cook County Jail in Illinois, the number of releases is 3rd nationally. It's actually an embarrassment. From October 2022 to February 2025, the Fairfax County Adult Detention Center freed more than 1,000 deportable illegal immigrants from lockup in direct defiance of over 1,150 detainers lodged by ICE. The people who the ranking member want to feel safe in Fairfax without worrying about whether they're actually safe are scared to walk home, are scared to take the bus to work, or if they're staying in a part of Fairfax that is not the best part of Fairfax, that they're going to encounter a criminal that is on release from the Fairfax County Jail. And to Mr. Beer, Congress does have limited powers, but we do have the power of the purse. And it becomes increasingly clear that for those jurisdictions that are happy to take federal tax dollars when it comes to COPS grants, and I'm a supporter of COPS grants, but when those jurisdictions are not actually implementing policies that create safe communities, that make maybe people feel safe, because you talk a lot about feeling safe, but are you actually safe in your community? In Fairfax, arguably no. I would say they're not. So making those COPS dollars contingent on 287G agreements is very legal, is very possible. You can shake your head.
No, it's definitely not.
And I didn't ask you a question, and I didn't ask you a question. So it is quite legal, and the bill that I've introduced would do just that.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Raskin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you want to address that, Mr. Beer?
Yeah, real quickly. I mean, we have multiple appeals courts decisions directly on the point of denying funding to jurisdictions based on the fact that they have Democratic leadership. The point about the Medicaid expansion in the Obamacare case, it was directly related. It was healthcare spending that they were making contingent on expanding Medicaid. The Supreme Court said you cannot coerce states and localities to adopt federal policy using money in this way. So there's no question it's unconstitutional for Congress to do this.
And then I think that's the position anyone who's a real champion of federalism and states' rights would hold, which is what you can't do indirectly, you can't do indirectly through the coercive use of money. You can't give a state a Godfather offer, which is basically, you do what we say or else. So Commonwealth's Attorney Descano, Sheriff Kincaid, I don't know if either of you can answer a few questions I've got. It seems to me like the whole premise of this hearing is to blame you for the terrible murder and tragedy of Stephanie Minter. But here's what I don't understand. The guy was being held for 2 years in 2018 and 2019 by ICE under the first Trump administration. Why was he not deported then? Why did he end up back on the streets? Why didn't ICE release him? Can you tell me why, Mr. Descano? Do you know, or Ms. Kincaid?
Well, that's a good question, and that's something that I would refer to ICE on, because they did have him in custody. And when he showed up back in our jurisdiction in 2022,
Yeah.
we wondered the same.
It's just fascinating to me that we've got 7 witnesses here, and somebody else who's not here, in addition to Stephanie, is ICE. ICE cannot account for, well, I'll get to you if I've got enough time. So that's baffling to me. That's puzzling. But, I've been asking about that for the last couple of days. Somebody said, well, he was from Sierra Leone, and Sierra Leone didn't want to take him back. But of course, as we know, this administration has no problem deporting people to third-party countries, removing them to third-party countries. Why wasn't he removed by ICE? They're the only ones who've got the power to kick him out of the country. You don't have the power to deport him, do you, State's Attorney?
No, sir, I don't have the power, and quite frankly, there's nothing in my policies. If somebody is deportable when they come to my office, there's nothing in my power to change that.
So how do you know exactly how many violent crimes he committed before he was in the custody of ICE? Because there were reports that he had committed, I think, a stabbing and some assaults.
I don't know the exact number, but I believe
Okay,
there were multiple.
so ICE was aware this guy's a violent criminal. They're holding him, and they release him back in the streets. Then you do your job and your only job, which is to prosecute those offenses. And you did that, right?
Yes, sir, and we got a multi-year jail sentence as well.
Okay. And Sheriff Kincaid, if I'm understanding you properly, ICE did not issue detainers when he was held for those offenses, or they did once and you complied with it, but on the other ones, they didn't issue. As I understand it, ICE didn't come forward with a detainer until after Stephanie Minter was killed. Is that right?
And a time before when we had to relocate this individual to a different facility. Other than that, there were no detainers at all.
Okay. And again, you know, I feel like we're in a courtroom in Fairfax County, Virginia, or in the Richmond legislature. Obviously, if somebody doesn't like the job that the sheriff is doing, somebody doesn't like the job the Commonwealth's attorney is doing, run against them. I mean, one of these sounded, Mr. Kennedy, you sound like a campaign speech you were making. You've got the right to run against him. Have you faced a re-election yet?
Yes, sir, and I won with 77% of my community's vote.
And are you elected, Sheriff Kincaid, or are you appointed?
No, I'm elected.
And have you won re-election?
Several times with the majority of the vote.
Okay, and I take it that all of these issues, which are complicated, which are a result of the failure of Congress to actually engage in comprehensive immigration reform, are heavily debated in Fairfax County. And, you know, we don't need to kick off your next re-election with debates here about your performance in office. And I think that that's beneath the dignity of this committee to be telling local officials they should be defeated or should resign from office. That doesn't make sense to me. Mr. Beer, what should Congress be doing to get us out of this constant immigration nightmare? We almost had a big bipartisan deal at the end of 2024. Everybody in the Senate agreed to it. All the Democrats in the House agreed to it. And then I think Donald Trump said, I don't want a deal. I want an issue to run on. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is, as you said, we need bipartisan immigration reform.
Suspend for a moment. The gentleman's time's expired. I'll give you a very brief time to answer that question. You can also respond to it in later questions.
We need to get back to legality and orderly immigration. And that means a process for people who are peaceful people to get legal status, and for people who are peaceful to come here legally. That's bipartisan immigration reform, in my opinion.
Chairman Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me first introduce Mr. Biggs for a unanimous consent request.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Here's a series of articles. I'll just do a few of them and then give the whole stack to you. Virginia murder suspect in bus stop stabbing had lengthy criminal history, multiple dropped charges. Abdul Jalad allegedly killed Stephanie Minter at Fairfax County bus shelter after prosecutors dropped charges in most previous cases. Completely failed Stephanie. Illegal alien with lengthy arrest record allegedly butchers woman at Virginia bus stop. And then there's a whole stack of others, which I won't read, but we'll just submit for the record if that's okay, Mr.
Without objection. Chairman Jordan.
Thank you. Sheriff, why'd you let Marvin Morales Ortiz out of jail?
Because I received a court order, a judicial order from a judge ordering his release.
Because the guy beside you wouldn't prosecute him, right?
You'd have to talk to him.
So this guy, the guy beside you wouldn't prosecute the guy who's an illegal migrant, who'd been charged with 6 different crimes, who was arrested for murder in 2020, who in 2023 assaulted a police officer, and who in September of 2025 was charged with aggravated malicious wounding and brandishing a gun. And that guy's released, you can't hold him because he's not going to be prosecuted. Is that right?
I'm not sure about, you know.
That's what you told us. You sent us a letter on March 11th, 2016, addressed to myself and Chairman McClintock. And you said on December 16, 2025, the Commonwealth's attorney moved to not prosecute the charges of aggravated malicious wounding and brandishing a firearm by Mr. Morales Ortiz. So you had to let him out, didn't you?
Through a court order by a judge, yes, I did.
You had to let him out.
I was ordered to release him by a judge.
I see you got some of your deputies behind. How's morale in your department, Sheriff? Is it good?
I didn't know I was here to talk about morale, sir, but based on
You're
what
here to answer the questions we ask you. That's what you're here for. Yeah.
Of course I am.
Okay.
But I'm also here to talk about what I was invited here to talk about.
Well, I'll refer you to a statement you made in August. Fairfax County Sheriff Stacey Kincaid.
Democrat also told 7 News reporter Nick Minnick, it's shameful the way things have not been prosecuted. Stand by that statement?
If that's what was written, I do.
No, I'm not asking if that's what's written. I'm saying, did you say that and do you stand by that? And is that having an impact on morale? Because most of the police departments I know and sheriffs and deputies that I know, when they get the bad guys off the street, they like to see them prosecuted so they don't come back on the street, harm the community you're supposed to protect, and make their job tougher because they got to go get them again when they commit some other crime. That's why I asked the morale question in light of your statement just a few months ago where you said it's shameful that the guy beside you is not prosecuting people.
I did.
You said that?
I did.
Okay, good. Mr. Descano, why'd you change your website?
So first of all, let me address what you had said
No. You
earlier
answered the questions
about-
we asked. You answered the questions we asked. I asked a simple question. Why did you change your website last month?
Well, sir, your statements about don't want to prosecute guys is absolutely false. And my policies so
I'm reading.
far in this
Are
hearing.
you saying what the sheriff
have-
wrote me is wrong?
No, what I'm saying is that the way that my policies have been
December 16th,
presented in this
you
are
chose
outrageous.
she said the Commonwealth's attorney, that's you, chose not to prosecute Mr. Morales-Ortiz on December 16th. And they had to release him. They had to do their job because you wouldn't prosecute. What happened on December 17th, Mr. Descano?
Well, so let's talk about December.
No, that's the
16th.
question. What happened on December
Well, sir,
17th?
I
This
think
same
you are
guy
stripping
murdered
out the
somebody.
nuance.
This guy murdered somebody. And I'm asking you, why did you change your website?
Well, do you not want me to talk to you about the actual case?
I want you to answer the first question I said.
Which
Why
was
did you-
about the
Why did
case,
you change
sir.
your website?
Well, sir, because the website is not my policy. My policy, you
I think the
are
voters
referring
might
to
be.
a campaign.
I think the voters might be interested in that.
Sir.
This is your campaign website where you said our office will take immigration consequences into account when making charging and plea decisions. Immigration consequences were certainly part of the game here, part of the issue here with Mr. Morales-Ortiz.
No, they weren't.
You decided
They
not to
absolutely were
prosecute.
not.
decided-
You are assuming something that is in fact untrue, because you are misrepresenting my policies. My policies do not say that we do not prosecute
Well, if you're
people
proud of
because
your
their
policies,
immigration
why'd you
status.
change your website?
Because that's not my policy. As I told you, sir,
Well,
that
it
is
was-
a campaign statement that I made
Mr.
before
Descano,
I was
it had
Commonwealth.
been
attorney.
up for 6 years. A week after we send you a letter saying we want you to come testify, Shazam, you change it.
Because
I'm
I
just
could not-
asking, is that coincidental?
Because I could not believe that people were so obtuse that they could not realize what the difference between a campaign statement and an actual office policy is.
So when you make campaign statements, those aren't true? You're not being honest with your voters?
That's not what I'm saying at all, sir.
Sure sounded
What I
like
am
it.
saying,
Sure sounded like it.
that's absolutely not. What I'm saying is that when you
You
when
haven't told me
write
why you took
office
it. You still haven't told me
policies-
why you took it down.
Because I was hoping to come here to talk about my office policies, not be distracted by a campaign statement that was
Not be
made
distracted.
a year
This
before
is-
I was actually Commonwealth's attorney,
Attorney
and
General.
had any cases that were mine.
This is almost laughable. This is your policy. You said it right here. You told the voters, if you elect me, I will take into account immigration consequences when making charging and plea
This
decisions.
is my policy, not
Right
what you
here.
have in your hand.
Oh, okay. So what you said to the voters is not real. Doesn't count.
No, sir, what I'm saying is that as an office holder,
I just
my
find it
office
interesting.
is run by my policy.
Your sheriff said you wouldn't prosecute. This guy gets released, kills someone the next day. We start asking about it. You change your website and take down the statements that say you're going to take into account immigration consequences when you
My
decide what
policy
you
is
are going
public,
to
and it
charge.
has been public the entire time I've been in office, sir.
Gentleman's time has expired. Ms. Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the ranking member and to our witnesses who, I know Mr. Beer has been here before, so he's familiar with how this committee rarely works on getting to the root of a problem and finding a bipartisan solution. I think this hearing is a perfect example of that. And to Ms. Minter, I am deeply, deeply sorry for your loss. No one on this committee, regardless of political party, wants criminals roaming the street, whether they're here illegally or whether they're U.S. citizens. And what happened to your daughter is a travesty, and I am so, so sorry. I also want to apologize to Sheriff Kincaid. This is Police Week. This is the week where we lift up what you and your team do to keep our communities safe. And it is clear from your testimony that that is your sole focus. So as the first person here to actually recognize that. I want to thank you for your service, and I want to thank the officers that you brought along with you.
Thank you.
State and local law enforcement officers know how to do their jobs. You have to build trust with community members in order to do your job. You have to build trust with those members to get them to bring crimes to your attention and to get the evidence you need to prosecute people who have done things that are just horrible, like in the case of Ms. Minter. Victims of crime also need to know that if they go to law enforcement to report a crime, they will not themselves be either detained or deported or something happen to them. Otherwise, we won't be able to deal with people in a civil society. I'm going to start with Mr. Beer because he is very experienced before this committee, and he's done a great deal of research on the topic of immigrants and crime. Before President Trump came to office, were immigrants more or less likely to report crime? And I'm not just talking about illegal immigrants, I'm talking about all immigrants, naturalized, people who are here legally, more or less likely to report crime and cooperate with the police compared to US citizens?
They were more likely, according to the Crime Victimization Survey, which is administered by the Department of Justice every year, more likely to report crimes to the police than US-born individuals. And that also holds true for non-citizens, half of whom are in the country illegally at that time.
And are immigrant victims of crimes, including those who have legal status, how are they treated when they report a crime or go to court to testify?
Well, right now, the administration is targeting people who go to courthouses. They're arresting witnesses and victims of crimes. They're working with state and local jurisdictions that will cooperate with them to make arrests. We've seen individuals, for example, in Palm Beach, Florida, an individual called 911, welfare check on his 4-year-old daughter. ICE worked with the Florida police to arrest him after he called 911. And he couldn't believe it. He was shocked that in America, they would prioritize arresting someone based on, effectively, he was an asylum seeker. He had an asylum application pending. Didn't matter. The ICE laughed at that because they don't consider that a basis to argue against detention anymore.
And my understanding is that last year, ICE agents even tackled a rape survivor at a courthouse after she gave sworn testimony in a case against a rapist. And that's been widely reported. Okay, well, thank you for that. I only have a few seconds left, but I want to ask Professor Stover, have you seen situations where victims specifically declined to call the police because they feared immigration consequences for themselves or their family members, thus allowing violent criminals to go free?
Yes, I absolutely have.
And have you had those incidents when the criminal was a citizen of the United States?
Yes, actually more often than not, when the actual abuse perpetrator is a citizen.
So that means citizens of the United States are not being prosecuted. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Van Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to bring us, I think the other side has brought us to bizarro world, and I want to bring us to the world of reality. First of all, I want to say to you, Ms. Minter, and I mean it, I know you hear crocodile tears from politicians, you hear how sorry, you hear how sad, you hear the condolences. None of that does it justice. There's no words I can ever say. I say this every time we have another victim's family here. I pray to God there's a day when this no longer happens and we don't have to have these hearings. But we are going to have them with the good leadership of our chairman of this committee because it needs to be talked about. And if it needs to be talked about over and over again, and good Americans like you are willing to be here because you love your children, because you loved her, and you're willing to stand up, I applaud you, because more than a condolence, more than any of that is when somebody says that to you, say, change the policy. Don't let it happen to somebody else. It shouldn't happen to anybody. God help you. I don't know how you do it, but we are praying for you. Secondly, when I say I want to bring us out of bizarro world, I was thinking about all the empty, a lot of times people gather around the kitchen table. Stephanie Minter's chair, that chair at the table is empty tonight. Lake and Riley's chair is empty tonight. Rachel Moran's chair is empty tonight. Jocelyn Nugari's chair. They're all human beings. They're all human souls that had families that love them and they love their family. They're gone. And we got more than that. We could spend the whole time here reading lists of people who've been murdered and hurt and beaten and raped because of what's happened and these policies. They're human beings. And you know what the worst of it is? And not the most important part, but on top of all of it, we're paying for all this. Sanctuary states and sanctuary cities cost a fortune. State in New Jersey, where I am, they estimate, and this is not me, came out in publications, $7.3 billion, not million, $billion every year because of sanctuary policies. That's a lot of money for people who are really squeezed. And it's horrible, and it shouldn't happen. And also, I want to allude to the fact, people are worried about sometimes when ICE goes into where there's a church, where there's a department store, or there's a school. Nobody's really wants that. Do you know why that's happening? It's happening predominantly in blue states because the local law enforcement, state, county, and local in sanctuary states are not allowed to cooperate, where normally they would turn somebody over to ICE and you wouldn't have to go through that process. If we all cooperated, worked together, and cared about the people we serve, we'd be in better shape. Mr. Descano, simple question. Are American communities safer when illegal immigrants who commit crimes are deported or when they remain in those communities? Are they safer when they're deported communities? Yes or no? Just yes or no?
Well, sir, that's not.
Yes or no? Yes or no?
Sir.
I'm asking the question.
And I'm trying to answer them.
No,
because you asked me a question that's outside of my purview.
Jim
I can tell
Jordan
you.
down there asked you questions. You're a human being. You're sitting next to a woman who lost her daughter. Can you tell me if illegal criminals are removed from the country if we're safer?
And to suggest that I don't care about what happens in my community.
This is my
I go
time.
to work every
You are going to
day
answer my
trying to protect
questions.
my community.
You are going to answer my questions. You don't show any discipline. When I'm asked questions, I answer them. So you're not willing to answer that question. Okay. So I ask you this question. Let's talk about Abdul Jalal. Yes or no, would Stephanie Minter be alive today if he had been deported? And you know why he wasn't deported? Because then, quite frankly, the administration was not as aggressive. And if a country didn't want to accept these awful people that came from the country, we didn't know where to send them, and we held them and we detained them. Now we're finding places to send them so that this doesn't go on. That's the answer. That's why that happened. It's not a mystery. It's not something weird or unusual. They didn't know where the heck to put it. Now we just do it and we get it done. But nevertheless, would we be safer if he wasn't in the country then? Would we be safer? Yes or no?
Sir,
yes or no, or to be safer if the man wasn't in the country? Damn it, answer my question.
Sir, I'm trying. You keep changing the question.
No, it's yes or no. There's a bad guy that murders people.
Certainly,
Are we safer that he's not in the country?
If somebody is...
Nope, you can't answer the question. I'm sorry. I'll ask you this. Explain to the lady next to you. Abdul Jalal was charged in your county more than 40 times, not 4 times, 40 times. Your office dropped the charges in almost every single case. That's fact. We have it documented. We can look at it. Your own Fairfax County Police Department wrote your office. We have it. It's fact. May 2025, saying he had shown a, quote, blatant disregard for human life and was a danger to the community. And that if he wasn't detained and deported, he would seriously hurt someone or kill someone. The very man went out and then killed someone. So the question is, couldn't have we done better there?
Yeah, the gentleman's time has expired.
I know,
We'll
can
take
you
that
answer
as a
the question?
rhetorical question, and Mr. Nadler's recognized. Oh, well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this subcommittee has hardly been busy this year. Clearly, Republicans have no desire to conduct oversight of the Trump administration's brutal and reckless campaign to strike fear in immigrant communities across the country. They don't want to draw more attention to an out-of-control Department of Homeland Security that lets masked agents murder American citizens and tear children away from their parents. They can't manage to hold a hearing about ICE detention facilities that fail to meet the basic medical needs of detainees and have their highest death rates in decades. And they certainly have no interest in holding a hearing to justify the Republican plan to hand a $70 billion blank check to the Trump administration to advance its reckless, chaotic, and inhumane immigration policies when it hasn't even spent most of the money we gave them in the big, ugly bill. Instead, they have called us here to distract from the horrors unfolding at Trump's DHS and to focus on one county in Virginia that has chosen not to join the Trump administration's extreme anti-immigrant agenda. They want to shine a spotlight on Fairfax County, one of the safest places in the country for a county of its size, because they think it's a good opportunity to engage in their favorite sport of fear-mongering and demagoguery. Mr. Descano, is there anything you have heard that you would like to respond to?
Yes, thank you, Congressman. I think that my policies have been completely misrepresented by some people in the committee and on this panel. My policies are prosecution policies that are meant to keep my community one of the safest large counties in the country. Lastly, I'd like to really drive home the point that when it comes to this Abdul Jallo case, my policies are a red herring. ICE knew about this gentleman for at least 8 years. To the question of if we would have been safer with him not here, yes, I wish ICE would have done its job in 2018 or 2019 when they had him. So the idea that my policies impacted many of these cases that are being talked about is simply a red herring and not true.
Thank you. Mr. Beyer, the Trump administration claims that it's only going after the worst of the worst and targeting criminals. But according to ICE's own data, the majority of immigrants they have detained have no criminal record. Is the Trump administration really going after the worst of the worst?
No, not only do 72% not have a criminal conviction, only 6% have a violent criminal conviction. You look at how DHS internally is classifying its detainees. They have multiple threat levels, 3 different threat levels, and they actually deem 72% of the people, when they have to do it internally, decide, okay, we need to actually rank these people and prioritize who do we need to detain. 72% of the people entered and booked into ICE custody were not deemed a threat. So it's according to their documents, their own analysis from the Department of Homeland Security under Secretary Noem, who put out this information. So no, they're not going after public safety threats. That's totally wrong. They're going after people going to work. They're racially profiling Americans, as I said. They're even arresting legal immigrants and again, setting them up for arrest by not processing their applications. Joseph Edlow, who's the head of USCIS, has a policy. They're just going to shut down processing of the vast majority of green cards. And so that results in people losing status and enables ICE to go out and arrest them. Legal immigrants being arrested because the Department of Homeland Security doesn't do its job.
Professor Stover, do you have any recent examples where victims or witnesses to crimes were afraid to interact with law enforcement? And what happened in those cases?
Yeah, it's incredibly common now that there's just an absolute fear of interacting with law enforcement and even seeking civil protection orders, the civil remedies. So it's not only a fear of increasing. What ends up happening if people aren't seeking help? And then also I want to add to the conversation that benefits, public benefits, CHIP, SNAP, have been cut off to legal immigrants and those who hold the temporary status. And so really what's happening is that the abuse is continuing and that people's financial security is weakening. And what we have is greater crime.
Thank you, Mr. Beyer. Can you explain why civil immigration detainers are unlawful under the Fourth Amendment?
Well, you can't hold someone unless you have probable cause and a court order. And this is
Once again, the gentleman's time's expired. Brief response. You can pick it up on the next question.
There are multiple appeals court decisions on this. You cannot detain someone based on a civil detainer that's not based on a court order. So if Fairfax gets a court order, they will detain them. But without a judicial order, they don't have authority under the Constitution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The gentleman doesn't have any time to yield back. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to yield to
I yield it nonetheless.
I'm going to yield to the chairman here in a second, but I think this is actually a remarkable hearing, what I've witnessed today, both from the sheriff and the Commonwealth's attorney. The inability or the unwillingness to prosecute crimes that are committed in your jurisdiction, I think is almost a fireable offense. And I hope that the good people of Virginia remove you from office. Criminals are back out on the streets in Fairfax County because you want to virtue signal public safety and you're making communities less safe. In fact, we have a bill called Logan's Law. You would be a poster child because I bet if we stacked up your plea deals and your drop charges against other real prosecutors in the country, what it would show is that you're actually operating like a public defender and not a prosecutor. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield you the balance of my time.
I appreciate the gentleman yielding. Mr. Attorney General, let me ask you a few things here. Well, first of all, in your distinguished career, Attorney General, I think you were in the Assembly before that, but before all that, you were a prosecutor yourself. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And is it a good thing if the law enforcement people aren't getting along with the prosecutor? I mean, normally it's better if they get along and they're working together to keep the bad guys off the street.
No,
and protect the community,
no
right?
question. It's a cooperative arrangement.
Yeah, and in your time as a prosecutor, I doubt, maybe you did, but I doubt it, your distinguished career, that you ever had your chief law enforcement in whatever jurisdiction you were prosecutor. I doubt if you ever had them say, it's shameful the way this prosecutor is not prosecuting. Did that ever happen to you, Mr. Attorney General?
No, we never had what happened with the Fairfax police using chief said. What bothers me about this case is the fact that this absolutely could have been prevented. Stephanie Minter should be alive right now, and she's not because Steve Descano's office chose to release him back in the public. No, that's never happened in my career.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen in most places where you got a prosecutor who works with law enforcement to keep the bad guys off the street. Now, let's get back to this policy issue that Mr. Descano was talking about. He says what he said to the voters when he was running for the job, that doesn't really count. I got an official policy. What I said to the voters, no, don't forget that. Frankly, that's what happens in a lot of politics. I should think it should be just the opposite. Whatever you told the voters, if they elect you, you should do what you said. I think he's doing that. I think he's just trying to wiggle around it now. But here's the policy. Consideration of, this is County of Fairfax, Commonwealth Attorney Procedure Memorandum 1215-2020 Policy Title Guidelines for Plea Bargaining, Charging Decisions, and Sentencing, authorizing signature Steve Descano. And here's what it says on point 14, Mr. Attorney General. Consideration of immigration consequences. Assistant Commonwealth attorneys shall consider. We all know we're in this business of writing laws. May and shall are two different words, right? Shall means you got to look at this stuff. Now, he puts a little other thing, shall consider immigration consequences where possible. We're doing so accords with justice, all that stuff. But it's not a may, it's a shall. That is their policy. Do you agree with that, Mr. Attorney General?
That is their policy, yes, Mr. Chairman.
And do you believe that has impacted the decision to let these bad guys on the street who did terrible things? Again, Ms. Minter is beside you.
Just between 2022 and 2024, Mr. Descano dropped the charges on Mr. Gill of trespassing, malicious wounding, theft, petty larceny, trespassing, disorderly conduct, and malicious wounding.
That's like 7 crimes, right?
Correct.
Now, here's what I want to know. And maybe your office, Mr. Descano, is willing to get us this information. Because you said, oh, no, immigration status. My last time you said immigration status had no determination on the decision relative to Mr. Morales-Ortiz. I want to know in cases where it did. What were the cases where you changed the plea agreement or you changed the charging decision that were based on consideration of their immigration status? If you say this doesn't matter anymore, we took it down off the website, I don't really believe what I told the voters. If that's the case, I want to know, did you ever use immigration status as a reason to impact the sentence and the charging decision or a plea agreement?
Well, sir,
can you get us that information? That's what I'm asking. Just get us that information. I want to know here are the cases where we took into account this individual's immigration status and we changed the charging decision. Can you give us those cases?
Sir, I don't have those cases with me. I'd love to talk to you about the policy.
That. You don't have those cases with you. Is it a significant number?
Well, sir, if I may dig into the policy, I think it'll be illustrative.
No, I asked you about cases. I want to know the number of times you took into their, because here's what everyone sees. You're trying to say it's not the case. Everyone sees you got an American citizen who does a crime. You got an illegal immigrant who does the exact same crime. Your policy seems to me says that this person will get a different sentence or a different charge, different plea agreement than the American citizen.
It
Yeah, and I want to know if that ever happened.
It absolutely says in the policy in black and white that an immigrant will not get a better outcome than a U.S. citizen. That is in the policy. That's later. You read one half sentence, sir. This is a 2-paragraph policy.
Well, here's what, again, let's go back to the website you took down.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, the gentleman's time has expired.
I think the gentleman,
Mr. Tiffany.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Ms. Minter for the verse that she read at the end of her testimony. It was moving, and thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for sharing the memories of your daughter with us with those pictures. And I'm just sorry that there's not going to be more pictures for us to be able to see in the future. Wish you the very best. In Wisconsin, Mr. Miaris, I've got a question for you at the end of a couple sentences here. In Wisconsin, we had a terrible situation. It sounds like it's like Fairfax. In Dane County, which is Madison, Wisconsin, they have this same thing. They have sanctuary policies. And an illegal Venezuelan immigrant, known gang member, was let free. Excuse me. He then later arrested. He was later arrested over 100 miles away in the town of Prairie du Chien in Wisconsin. And he was charged with domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and strangulation. Doesn't this make it very clear that these sanctuary policies, they affect all of us, whether it's in our state, our region, whatever. And I think about all the people that come from our great state of Wisconsin that visit Washington, D.C. Seems to me that Fairfax County, not very far away, that this can be a problem for people who live all over the country, just like this example where Madison, Dane County, Wisconsin, refused to remove someone who went on to strangle someone. Isn't this a really big problem that is being created that does not just affect places like Dane County, Wisconsin, and Fairfax County, Virginia?
It is a massive problem, Congressman. And if you meet with victims, as I have through the years, the one thing a victim will tell you they do not want to become is just a number, just a statistic. It has been cited, some of Fairfax public safety numbers, but at the end of the day, every victim, their life has changed from the date of the offense when they have lost their loved one. It absolutely affects. And what's amazing about this is that in counties where you actually have, say, Bedford County in Virginia, with Sheriff Miller, great sheriff, and Wes Nance, a great Commonwealth attorney, they don't get these headlines. They don't get these headlines because they actually cooperate with federal immigration authorities. But what happens in Fairfax is they're making a conscious decision, and you're seeing it over and over again. And it's not just a failure to cooperate with federal immigration authorities. It is a conscious decision by Steve Descano to under-prosecute crimes over and over again. People have made some pointing out of what happened when a judge told ICE that they had to release him because they were not allowed to deport him to Sierra Leone. But the reality is this was so preventable because multiple times he was arrested, multiple times this prosecutor had the policy of under-prosecuting and dropping charge. And it's not just this case, it's multiple cases. He has made a conscious decision. I'm a little incredulous he has decided to say, well, the promises I made to the campaign when I was campaigning voters, they don't really count. I'm a firm believer, let your yes be yes, your no be no. And it's not what you say, it's what you do. He may claim this has no impact on his charging decisions, but if you look at time and time again, and I can go through the cases, and so can Mr. Kennedy, there is a volume of cases where he has made a conscious decision to under-prosecute and essentially treat illegal immigrants with greater deference than he would an American citizen who is charged with a crime.
Is there a correlation with the crime statistics being down? I was looking at some yesterday that came out of the Judiciary Committee where I think it was 67 of the largest municipalities here in America. The decrease in a year was like 236 fewer murders in the United States. So think about it. Compared to the previous year, there's 236 more people that are alive in America as a result of this. Is there a correlation with this securing our border and those places that choose to be tough on crime? Do you think there's a correlation?
No question, because I do think sanctuary policies also create a magnet for groups. If you look at, say, Fairfax County, it's estimated roughly 200,000 illegal aliens are in Fairfax. If you look right next door to Loudoun, it's about 25,000. Why? MS-13 and TD and other transnational gangs understand that they are in a sanctuary that they can operate with impunity. They then reside in Fairfax and oftentimes are committing their crimes all over.
So Fairfax and Dane County, Wisconsin, they're actually magnets for violent illegal aliens.
Right. They know they can go there, and if they're picked up on a charge, they know they have local government. In this case, the Fairfax Board of Supervisors has passed the trust policy, which is an explicit prohibition on cooperation. And they know this. They're not dumb. They know which localities are open the doors to them and which localities cooperate with federal authorities.
Gentleman's time
Thank you,
has
Mr. Chairman.
expired. Mr. Knott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Minner, I'm so sorry. This is clearly a preventable crime, despite what has been said. As the father of 2 daughters, I can't imagine what you're going through, what you will go through. And candidly, I would not be acting as civilly with some of the people you're seated with had I suffered what you've had to endure. So thank you for being here. Mr. Descano, you said that, quote, we prosecute Virginia cases. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And you painted a picture of being rigorous in your efforts to prosecute bad people, correct?
Yes, when we prosecute, of course, we take a look at every case.
Yep.
We are constrained by the evidence. We're constrained by the law. And I will tell you, Congressman, you know, I think what is happening here with the number of cases that we're talking about are.
Well, I want to talk to you about one of those cases. I want to talk to you about one of those cases, sir. Mr. Hiram Rodriguez, remember that case?
I do.
Leading up to the crime that I want to talk about, the defendant's criminal history included multiple charges and arrests for indecent liberties, exposing himself to a child less than 15 years of age, disorderly conduct, illegally entering a property to damage, burglary. He was even sentenced, albeit I would say too lightly, while he was on probation, while he was under court supervision in June 15th, 2023 at 4 o'clock in the morning, Fairfax County PD responded to a burglary in process. A mother and her 4-year-old daughter were asleep in the same room, but in separate beds. The mother was awoken when her 4-year-old daughter was screaming in the next room. She went to investigate. The attacker dropped the 4-year-old and fled the scene. It was clear that the 4-year-old had been abducted from her bed. Her buttocks had been grabbed. Her torso had been bruised. The victim displayed immediate bruising. The mother did not see the attacker's face, but the 4-year-old said he was a, quote, big man. Law enforcement identified Mr. Rodriguez by 2 ways. Forensics recovered a finger and palm print from the window that he jarred open in this case, and matched footprints outside the house where he was standing with a mud print inside the house. Eyewitness testimony later identified Rodriguez as having been loitering for days outside this apartment building. He had been seen using drugs in the neighborhood, and he had been pacing around this particular unit in the days leading up to the crime. Police secured 2 warrants. One, statutory burglary, specifically alleging that Rodriguez entered an occupied dwelling, seizing a 4-year-old with the intent to commit murder, rape, robbery, or arson. Maximum penalty is 20 years. Abduction of a 4-year-old with the intent to defile such a person was the second charge, with a maximum penalty of life. Once it was handed over to your office, inexplicably so, you immediately reduced the burglary offense to a misdemeanor, which capped the sentence at 12 months. You then reduced the abduction charge to an offense that was a lower degree and capped the sentence at 10 years. When you entered into a plea agreement, you tried to bind the court so they could not sentence this person to any term over 2 years. Is that not correct?
Sir, I'm so glad you brought this case up.
Is that not correct?
Well, because I would like to explain, sir.
It is correct. And the court rejected it.
Sir, I know
This
the
was
case file.
I'm talking. It was a judge that was appointed by Senator Warner. This is not a right-wing judge. This is a liberal judge. And you know why he rejected it?
Sir,
he saw what you should have seen. He cited overwhelming evidence.
Can we talk about the evidence,
This person was a threat.
I know it and you don't.
Quit talking.
And I would love to tell you about it.
This person was a threat. He yanked a 4-year-old girl out of her bed with the intent to harm her. And you wanted to give her a cap of 2 years.
Sir, this
And
is a
then when
great
the plea
example.
agreement was rejected, what did you do?
Sir, this is a
What
great
did
example.
you do?
This is a great example of a case.
You know, I've prosecuted.
where-
Now, I've prosecuted
And then
cases.
you understand
And when
cases
you're
that have-
evading
don't
like
have
that,
strong
you know what that's a
evidence then,
sign
sir.
of? Guilt. What did you do?
Sir,
You dismissed the case.
Sir, can I please
Mr.
talk to you
Miyares,
about this case
when you
if you want to
dismiss,
know about it so
be
much?
quiet. When you dismiss a case, what happens to that defendant?
He walks free.
Walks free. A disgusting, perverted individual preying on children that you dismissed the case. As the father of 2 young girls, one of them's 5. That is
I have
as
a daughter too,
shameful
sir.
as
Don't-
anything I
please
have
don't
seen.
talk to me
Quit
that I
defending
don't
the
care about
indefensible.
people in my
You clearly
community.
don't.
Absolutely
You dismissed
not.
the case, and it's shameful.
Sir,
You're a coward. You
I'm
are a
a cow-
coward.
you won't even let me talk to you about the case.
It's indefensible, sir. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing on a really important issue that I think a lot of Americans care very deeply about. Mr. Descano, I want to start with you. I've got a couple questions for you. I've got a document titled Guidelines for Plea Bargaining Charging Decisions in Sentencing. And it states that prosecutors shall consider the collateral immigration consequences of the specific crimes the defendant is charged with and the detrimental impact the deportation removal has on the families and communities who those removed will leave behind. This is a document, this is your official policy. This is not from your campaign website. This is the official policy document as well. Is that correct? Do you recognize this?
Yes, you read a portion of the policy, sir.
That's right. I'm not going to read the full thing.
Oh, I don't expect you, sir.
It's about 11 pages. I'm not going to read the full thing. I want to better understand how you weigh an illegal alien's immigration status whenever you're making charging decisions. Do you know who Ander Cortez-Mendez is? Are you familiar with that case?
Yes, sir.
Okay, this is a Guatemalan illegal alien who was arrested in March of 2024. He was initially charged with, quote, carnal knowledge of a 13 to 14-year-old. Just for those of us who aren't lawyers, can you describe just very briefly what does carnal knowledge of a 13 to 14-year-old mean in this context?
Well, sir, generally, a charge like that would typically refer to underage sex.
Okay, so he raped an underage person, an illegal alien who raped an underage American. Your office reduced those charges to a misdemeanor charge of consensual sex with a child 15 years and older. You offered him a 90-day suspended jail sentence. Is that correct?
Sir, based on the evidence that we had in the case.
So it is correct.
But it's not related to the policy, sir.
So that is correct. I just want to ask you, whenever you were making that charging decision to reduce the charge, how did you weigh the defendant's immigration status?
Well, sir, to be clear, I was not the lead prosecutor in that case.
It was your office.
Oh, absolutely, sir. I, of course, rely on my team of 50-some attorneys to do cases. But I think what is important is that oftentimes, as you know, sir, as a prosecutor, we're constrained by the evidence. We're
I
constrained
just need
by
to know,
what we
how
have.
did you take into account the defendant's immigration status?
Well, sir, again,
in
I'm saying
making that decision. How did your office make that determination?
Well, what I would say is that, and thank you for clarifying. If you take a look at the immigration consequences policy, or
Let me ask it a different way. Did your office reduce charges against this illegal alien from a felony rape charge to a misdemeanor charge with a 90-day suspended jail sentence, in part because this was an illegal alien in question?
No, this was evidentiary based.
It was evident it had nothing to do with the defendant's immigration status.
So when
your testimony?
If you read the policy, you'll see that.
Did it have
explicitly
anything to
carves
do with
out-
the defendant's immigration status? It's just yes or no.
Well, sir, it was based on the evidence.
I'm asking you, was their immigration status part of the evidence?
I don't believe
Yes-
so,
Yes
sir.
or no? You don't believe so? Your Policy says that you shall consider their immigration
Actually,
status.
sir, if you actually read the whole policy, it explicitly carves out
Prosecutors shall
cases.
consider the collateral immigration consequences of the specific crimes the defendant is charged with and the detrimental impact that deportation removal has on the families.
It also mentions that
line for
it's not outcome determinative. It also
I understand, and
explicitly
I'm
states.
asking you if you weighed, your office weighed the defendant's immigration status in making your charging decisions here.
Oh, again, sir, I was not the lead prosecutor in this
I'm
case,
asking
but-
for your office. I understand you're not the lead.
Exactly. I just want to be clear. But the way that the policy is written, that case should not have fallen under the rubric of this policy. This is a narrow policy and is meant to be a narrow
It's
policy.
an illegal alien, I think that would qualify, would it not?
Well, no, sir, because again, the way that the policy is being presented as it is outcome determinative.
There would
to
be
every case.
immigration consequences based on what charge you bring. That would clearly apply to this case.
No, sir. Again, that's the reason why I mentioned earlier, you read a portion, but not the entire 2 paragraphs of this subheading.
Prosecutors shall consider. I just want to know, just give me a yes or no answer. Did you take into account the defendant's immigration status?
Sir, again, I was not, but the way the policy,
Did your office
the
take
way
it?
the
It's a yes or
policy
no
is written,
question.
no, they should not have taken.
Should not have.
That is not outcome determinative in a case like this, sir.
Great. Thank you. My time's up.
Mr. Grothman.
Yeah, I had another hearing, so I apologize if I'm asking a question that's already been asked. Obviously, we have immigration laws in this country. Every country has immigration laws. We have 800,000 people about naturalized in this country every year. And we're right now in a position in which 1 out of 6 Americans in this country, are foreign born, or 1 out of 6 people in this country, which is the all-time high. So nobody could say that under current law, we are not more than generous with people who want to come here. Nevertheless, there's some people who I can only, unless they're very foolish, are trying to destroy the country by, in addition to the 800,000 people getting sworn in, want to let unlimited other people in the country. Now, my first question is for Sheriff Kincaid. I hear from my local sheriffs in Wisconsin, if there's any activity from federal agents, FBI, ATF, DEA, U.S. Marshals, Secret Service, they are always contact the federal agency, or they call them to coordinate with them, maybe to set up a perimeter, or maybe if they have to remove somebody, take them to the local jail. We are told, and that would seem to be automatic as an American. Nevertheless, we're told, Sheriff Kincaid, that your office sometimes is reluctant to assist federal agencies in ongoing investigations intended to safeguard citizens. How do you respond to that charge?
First and foremost, we never obstruct ICE. As a matter of fact, we work with them in 3 or 4 more ways. When they request and call and ask for assistance, especially when it comes to turning someone over, we coordinate that with them to ensure their safety. But as far as not cooperating with them, we do that all the time, just like any other law enforcement agency.
Okay. Does Virginia law explicitly authorize compliance with ICE detainers within 5 days of a criminal alien's release from your custody?
Based on the judicial, or the administrative warrant, there is law that allows for us to turn an individual over to ICE 5 days prior to when they are set to be released. And ICE does know that.
Yeah.
And we do.
You do, okay. Has your office conducted an audit of what happens to individuals you've released instead of honoring ICE detainers, or do you always honor the detainer?
In terms of, we honor detainers. It is when we are presented with a judicial warrant that we will continue to detain somebody because it's authorized by a judge.
Okay. Mr. Mayeris, can you give a high-level overview of the findings of your September 2025 investigation into Fairfax County Commonwealth's Attorney's Office?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we conducted one and saw that, in our opinion, that Mr. Descano views himself more as a social worker than a prosecutor. And that as a result, he has systematically failed the victims in Fairfax County. We talked to so many, not just those, and including the victims that were immigrants, but everyday citizens that had felt that the Fairfax County Commonwealth Attorney's Office had failed them.
Okay, could you respond, or do you agree with everything Sheriff Kincaid just told you?
I do find it curious what we have is they keep trying to say they need a judicial warrant. As you know, DHS and others said that that is not required in this case. And what you've seen actually in Virginia, disturbingly, is that we just had our current governor pass an executive order, first one, EO1, that banned cooperation with federal immigration authorities, not just with the state police overturning Governor Youngkin's policies, but also with the Department of Corrections. In other words, someone that is a convicted felon in a Virginia prison, even then. And so you're seeing a lot of bad policies from Fairfax being brought statewide.
Okay, that's kind of shocking, and I guess if you'd elaborate on it a little bit and what would happen in this country if, or what effect that has on people who are here illegally and are illegally committing crimes.
We as a nation allow roughly 1 million legal immigrants a year. We are a good and decent and generous people. That's who we are. I'm the child of an immigrant. But what Americans do not like is be seeing that they're being taken advantage of. During the Biden administration, between 8 to 10 million illegal immigrants came into this country. That is larger than the population of 32 U.S. states. That is not tenable. People are not doing it the right way. There is not a country on the planet that is generous with legal immigration as we are. It's not even close. But what we don't appreciate right now are people that are cutting in line and breaking our laws. It's something we all learned in grade school. But we have too many policymakers who decide that's okay, and they shrug their shoulders. They turn a blind eye. In this case, Steve Descano deciding to adopt policies, taking someone's illegal immigration status and under-prosecuting cases in which we're seeing the tragic results as we're seeing today.
Gentleman's time has expired. Ms. Gammon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I practiced alongside immigration attorneys for a period of time before coming to Congress, so have a sense of just how broken our immigration system is and how hard it is even for people who are trying to follow the rules to actually follow the rules. So a lot of the conversation we have in Congress seems to come from folks who don't understand how the system is actually working or not working. And if our Republican colleagues want to talk about who and what is making Americans less safe today, it's this White House and its chaos and its reckless mass deportation agenda. Families and communities are being torn apart. Citizens have been ripped from their homes with no warrants in cases of mistaken identity. Federal agents have shot and killed Americans in our streets for daring to question their unlawful tactics. The White House has prioritized meeting deportation quotas, and in doing so has targeted all immigrants, including those who have followed our rules and who, until this administration changed the rules, those folks were in our country legally. But the majority of folks who have been detained by ICE have no criminal record here or in their home countries. And that's according to the agency's own data. While ICE and CBP claim to be focusing on the worst of the worst, instead they've gone after toddlers with Spider-Man backpacks, parents taking their kids to school or to the hospital for cancer treatment, hardworking people showing up at work, spouses of military veterans and active duty service members, and law-abiding people who are showing up for their interviews and court hearings as they are following the rules to do what they need to do to become citizens or obtain other forms of legal status. So who does any of this make more safe? Aside from the trauma and the heartbreak that these policies have inflicted on individual families and communities, the damage to our economy is mounting by the day. That damage comes from companies rethinking their investments in the U.S. because they see their citizens, their folks getting abused by our immigration agents. Tourists who've decided not to visit Disney World or celebrate our 250th anniversary or attend the World Cup this year. We've seen bookings from overseas are down 20 to 30% across the country, but we're particularly sensitive to it in Philadelphia. And we're seeing physicians, researchers, and students from around the world who've been deterred from bringing their talents and their what they can bring to our country by additional visa fees and by the risks of being targeted by misguided immigration agents. So throughout our country's history, immigrants have been drawn here by the promise of America and its brighter future, and they bring meaningful contributions to our economy, our culture, our social fabric, in all of our communities. So we should be fixing our outdated, broken immigration system to make it better and more efficient, not undermining it or just trying to gut it entirely, because failing to do that work is a huge disservice to all of us and to the future success of our nation. Our Republican colleagues have tried to say this is about fighting crime, but in pursuit of this administration's indiscriminate crackdown, they're diverting federal law enforcement, prosecutors, and resources away from serious threats, including child exploitation, fentanyl trafficking, domestic terrorism. So this is really misguided. It seems to be entirely about politics and not about actual safety. Mr. Descano, in the few seconds we have left, is there anything you would like to add? Because you seem like you've been a very practical and engaged public servant.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman. And there are a few things I'd love to add. First of all, let me be clear. My policy that we're talking about was written with legal permanent residence in mind for minor crimes. It was based off of the Padilla versus Kentucky U.S. Supreme Court case that said it is a good idea for prosecutors and defense attorneys to take into account and to know collateral immigration consequences. The other thing I'd like to say is Mr. Miyares and Mr. Kennedy, they've never been in my office. They've never seen the case files that I've seen. They jump to a bunch of conclusions.
Gentleman's time has expired, but I'll let you finish that sentence.
Thank you, sir. They jump to conclusions about case outcomes that we may not be thrilled about and give it and ascribe reasons that simply aren't the reasons.
Thank you, Mr. Ander.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Descano, in your written testimony, you wrote the system failed Ms. Winter. Do you consider yourself part of that failure?
Sir, I do believe that the entire system did fail. I will tell you that I wish that there were things that we could have done and had the evidence to go forward with on some of those cases.
Did the police fail Ms. Minter?
No, sir. I think what
Did Sheriff Kincaid fail Ms. Minter?
No, sir, but I think
everyone failed Ms. Minter. The system failed, the amorphous system, not you. You, a soft on crime Soros prosecutor, not you, who do not honor ICE detainers. Neither of you believe in honoring ICE civil detainers. No, judicial detainers that in most cases are not even possible to obtain. Ms. Minter, do you feel the system failed you and your daughter, Stephanie? Yeah. Do you feel, Ms. Minter, that, and you can opine or not if you don't, do you feel that Mr. Descano's prosecutor's office hears victims?
Hears victims?
It takes victims into account and potential victims?
No.
Because I think based on the policies of Fairfax County, both the sheriff's office and the prosecutor's office, what happened to you and your family was entirely preventable.
I believe it was.
We have when you have the policy of not cooperating with ICE, by the way, in violation of federal law, these things are going to happen. People who should not have been in the United States of America at all, criminal, illegal aliens, in our solicitousness to appease the radical left base of the Democrat Party and their open borders policies. It's the policy. We don't want to deport anyone. Mr. Descano even said it on his campaign website. Well, that's not really the policy of the Fairfax County prosecutor's office. Okay, were you lying to the voters or are you lying to us now, today?
I just believe, what I believe is that the vicious criminals The criminals that keep hurting our people should be out of here. They need to be deported. And you know what? I don't think it has to do with ICE. I think it has to do with having, I mean, we're nowhere. We're not a country without illegals coming in. Without people coming in from the other country. That's what our country is built on.
There is no such thing as a sovereign nation without secure borders. Well, thank you. No, thank you. Thank you for your courage being here today. Yes, I mean, it's nice to give lip service. Oh, the system failed you, Ms. Minter. But it's another thing to do something about it, especially when the radical base of your party doesn't want you to do anything about it. And I think we know the two elected officials to your left today, we know where they sided. We know, did they side with victims or did they side with their radical left open borders base? I think we know the answer to that. Mr. Beyer, you kind of implied that somehow because the United States is so dysfunctional regarding legal immigration, that somehow encourages illegal immigration. In some way, I may believe that. But I want to give you some numbers. You know, in 2024, the United States it gave 1.36 million foreign nationals green cards. 226,000 family-sponsored visas, 150,000 employment-based visas, 52,000 diversity legal lottery visas. In early 26, there was an asylum backlog of 3.5 million cases. Mid-2025, temporary protected status backlog, 1.2 million cases. Mr. Mayer said, and I think I got this right, there's no country on this planet that's more generous to legal immigrants than the United States of America. If the numbers I read to you, Mr. Beyer, are not enough, what is the right number? Because roughly 1 billion people on this planet live on $2 or less per day. And I imagine quite a few of them would like to immigrate to the United States. What is that number? Is there a number, or should they all billion be able to immigrate into the United States legally or illegally?
Well, the United States ranks in the bottom third.
Mr. Beer, I'll give you a few seconds to respond.
The United States ranks the bottom third of wealthy countries for its foreign-born share of the population, for the rate at which it admits people. We're a very large country. We have 338 million people in here.
So the goal is
1 million people is 1/3% of the population. That's half of what it was in the early 20th century, and we survived that and thrived as a result of it. So yes, we can allow more legal immigration to the United States. We should have processes that are fair, that allow people an opportunity to come and protect our rights as Americans to associate and contract.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
With people born in other
yield back my
countries.
negative
Time has
time.
expired. I'll recognize myself. We've got a unanimous consent request. Ms. Jayapal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record an opinion piece from our Seattle City Attorney entitled "Seattle's Welcoming City Policies Keep Us Safe."
Without objection. I'll now recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Descano, in the case of Mr. Rodriguez, whose charges you dropped in the case of the 4-year-old who was attacked in her own bedroom, I understand he was later taken into custody by ICE and deported. I'm just curious, did you notify ICE of that release so that they could deport him, or was it the little girl's mother who had to call ICE to get him out of your community?
Sir, we did not call ICE.
The mother had to call to get him out of your community. Mr. Mayoris, we keep hearing from Sheriff Kincaid, among others, that they'd be happy to respond to a federal judicial warrant to honor a detainer request. Well, is a federal judicial warrant possible to obtain in a state crime?
No, it's not, and they know this.
And if deportation is a civil matter, how does one get a federal judicial warrant?
You can't. Again, they know this.
So they're basically lying to the public. They're counting on the public not understanding that what they're asking for is legally impossible.
It's legally impossible, yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Kennedy, do you find it odd that the Democrats are blaming ICE for not deporting this particular suspect who's accused of murdering Stephanie Minter? And yet at the same time, They refuse to notify ICE so they can deport such suspects, and they refuse to fund ICE so that they can deport such suspects.
I do find it odd, but I'm actually going to extend agreement to the Democratic side because I believe that Mr. Gill should never have been deported whatsoever. He should have spent the rest of his natural life before Stephanie Minter's death in the Virginia Department of Corrections. And short of that, he should have been deported to Sierra Leone after he served his sentence. None of that came about. He was never sent to prison. Mr. Descano said that he obtained a sentence for him for multiple years. He never left Fairfax County. He never was sentenced to prison. He spent time in the jail and was released because of good time credits. Mr. Gill should have spent the rest of his life in prison and then been deported.
I should have to go on. We keep hearing these sanctuary policies enhance public safety. What have your studies shown?
That these aren't the same thing. That every single person who is injured or is a victim of a property crime, a person crime, let alone a homicide, was a completely preventable homicide, was a completely preventable crime. And so these are all excess things that didn't have to happen. And when it comes to repeat offenders, I identify in my testimony 25 incidents, 25, and half of them are unknown to the rest of the public, where escalating violence occurred, escalating.
And that's including 3 out of 7 homicides in Fairfax County. The Center for Immigration Studies looked at the escape documentation from states seeking reimbursement for illegal aliens held in their state prisons. They found that illegal aliens are typically at least 3 times as likely to be incarcerated than citizens or lawfully present aliens. Mr. Mayoris, Democrats say this is all necessary to get illegal immigrants to report crimes. But in fact, if an alien is the witness to or a victim of a crime, don't they qualify for a U visa to remain in this country under current law?
Well, I don't think it builds community trust either when you see a catch and release program being instituted by this Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. That does not build trust for you to come forward to testify.
Someone's not going to report a crime if they knew that criminal is going to be back on the streets later that afternoon to take vengeance.
That is correct. And so what you have seen is a revolving door. Every policy Mr. Descano advocates for, policies he supported in the General Assembly, is to allow a revolving door, changing our bond policies in Virginia, and his own personal policies that they have in Virginia is to release criminals back into the community time and time again. And we know from his official policy that he takes in factor their immigration status as well.
And ironically, when these criminals are released back into the community, they tend to prey on the illegal immigrant community where they've come from, do they not?
No question.
In fact, we had just a case recently where a legal immigrant from Bangladesh had her head bashed in by an illegal Haitian national with a long rap sheet who'd been allowed to remain in this country under the TPS program. You mentioned that Governor Spanberger is expected to sign legislation that would forbid cooperation with ICE. I assume that would forbid notifying ICE if and when Stephanie Minter's killer is released.
Correct. He will be presumably in the Virginia Department of Corrections, and under a current executive order, as we noted, there's no requirement of a judicial warrant. They won't notify ICE. And so despite all of her public pronouncements,
Ms. Minter, Sheriff Kincaid said that she didn't have it in her budget to make a phone call to ICE to honor a detainer. Does that make you feel more safe? What's your response to Sheriff Kincaid?
I think I'm just going to start keeping a list and calling ICE myself. Might be easier.
My time's expired.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few more unanimous consent requests.
Go ahead.
Ask unanimous consent to enter to the record Cato Institute, Mr. Beers, policy analysis titled Immigrants Cut Victimization Rates and Boost Crime Reporting.
Yes, we've seen it without objection.
Another one that is titled Family Says Virginia Domestic Violence Victim Didn't Seek Help Due to Immigration Fears. And another one entitled She Testified About Being Raped, Then ICE Showed Up, from the Atlantic.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And if there's no
far too soon, I'm sorry for your loss. I also understand that we're joined by people from the Fairfax community today, and I want to welcome you. If you're willing, would you please stand up if you're from Fairfax County? Wow, a lot of you. And please remain standing if you support immigrants and support policies that make sure that everyone feels safe in calling 911. I want to note for the record that everyone has remained standing, and it looks to be a crowd of over 50 people. So thank you so much for being here. You may be seated. This hearing is unfortunately another in a series of hearings that the majority has held that consistently attack trust policies that have upheld the necessary and important division between the enforcement of federal civil immigration law and the enforcement of local criminal laws. This division is proven over and over again in documented research to be essential in keeping all communities safe and ensuring that people come forward to report crimes. Immigration enforcement is a federal responsibility. And last year, Republicans gave the Department of Homeland Security over $170 billion in their big bad betrayal bill to meet the arbitrary immigrant arrest quotas of Stephen Miller and to carry out Donald Trump's cruel mass deportation agenda. Using this funding, ICE doubled in size. DHS officers killed 2 U.S. citizens in cold blood in Minnesota, beat and detained countless U.S. citizens for exercising their First Amendment rights, and broke down doors of U.S. citizens without a warrant in violation of the Fourth Amendment. We know of at least 1 U.S. citizen who has been arrested by ICE 3 times, despite repeatedly informing agents that he is a U.S. citizen. Another 18-year-old U.S. citizen with terminal cancer spent the last weeks of his life begging ICE to release his parents so that he could see them before he died. They reunited 1 day before he died. And that is just what they've done to Americans. ICE is also subjecting hundreds of parents and children to months in immigration prisons, conducted senseless deportations of military veterans, separated families, massively increased immigration detention, resulting in a record 48 deaths in ICE detention just since President Trump took office. A recent Politico analysis revealed that judges have ruled in at least 10,000 cases that the detention was illegal, with no due process, no opportunity for detainees to plead their cases. 10,000 people, including a nursing mother who was separated from her 1-year-old child despite active legal refugee status, and a 5-year-old boy detained by ICE on his way home from school. More than 425 judges have heard cases and reached the same conclusions about the illegality of Donald Trump's mass detention policies, including, by the way, a majority of Trump-appointed judges. 3 circuit courts have also now ruled the policy illegal. The impact of these illegal policies is not just being felt by immigrants, it's ripping apart entire communities across the country, creating fear and terror, and also negatively impacting opportunities for all Americans. A new study by the National Bureau of Economic Research just concluded that Trump's immigration raids are now even weighing on the labor market, leading to fewer jobs for US-born men without a college degree. Despite all of this, Republicans have refused to stop these illegal, unconstitutional, and cruel policies. They have refused to address the fact that while their anti-immigrant strategies may have worked before, they don't work anymore. Today, more than 60% of Americans disapprove of Trump's immigration policies. Americans want Trump and Republicans to focus on lowering their gas prices, lowering their grocery costs. They want Republicans to stop giving tax breaks to billionaires while stripping health care from tens of millions of Americans. But Donald Trump said it himself just a few days ago. In his own words, Trump said, quote, "I don't think about the financial situation of Americans." Really? That is exactly why Republicans are now planning to give ICE and Border Patrol an additional $70 billion with no oversight or accountability, and yet having a hearing this morning to complain that Fairfax County will not do ICE's job for them. Give me a break. DHS has plenty of money to hire all the new immigration enforcement agents they want. They don't need to commandeer the local police officers who are hard at work maintaining Fairfax's status as the safest county of its size in the United States. In one of the great ironies, Here we are in the Immigration Subcommittee having a hearing about the prosecutorial decisions of a county attorney and the jail policies of a county sheriff. Whatever happened to the Republican Party that believed in local government? There are many reasons that you will hear that states and localities choose not to or are unable to conduct immigration enforcement on behalf of the federal government. Numerous court orders have declared immigration detainers unlawful violations of the Fourth Amendment, and state and local officials don't want to spend huge amounts of money on court cases. State constitutions often contain prohibitions, and local police departments want to prioritize their already scarce resources to encourage the trust of people to come forward and report crimes without worrying about their own immigration status. The Major Cities Chiefs Association has repeatedly reaffirmed that cooperation with the immigrant community is essential to solve crime and prevent further criminal activity within the entire community, including ensuring protections for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. In 2019, my home state of Washington passed the bipartisan Keep Washington Working Act. For all these reasons, as have many states across the country, courts have ruled multiple times that states have the right to enact laws like the Keep Washington Working Act. These laws do allow information sharing with the federal government when necessary for an ongoing criminal investigation or pursuant to a court order or judicial warrant. This committee should be holding hearings on the unconstitutionality of this administration's policies, on the killing of American citizens by ICE and CBP. But instead, we're doing yet another hearing designed to further this administration's anti-immigrant agenda and distract people from the real issues at hand. The American people deserve better. I look forward to hearing from all of our witnesses today, and I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize the chairman of the full Judiciary Committee, Mr. Jordan, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, they let in 10 million illegal migrants during the Biden administration. Second step, create sanctuary jurisdictions, which makes it tough to remove those illegal migrants, even when they commit another crime. And then third, the Democrats say, we're not going to fund the guys that do the removing. We're not going to fund ICE. They shut down the government for 70-some days. And understand this, sanctuary jurisdiction policy in simple terms is politicians tell local law enforcement don't work with federal law enforcement when it comes to enforcing federal law. And that is the situation in 18 states, 11 cities, actually the other way around, 18 cities, 11 states, 3 counties, and the District of Columbia. But because those are big cities, big states, that's almost a third of the population lives in a jurisdiction where, again, local law enforcement is not allowed to work with federal law enforcement to enforce federal law. Let in 10 million, create sanctuary jurisdictions so it's tough to remove them even when they commit a crime, defund ICE, but Mr. Descano takes it even a step further. He takes it a step further and says, I'm not even going to prosecute the guys who do terrible things. I'm not going to prosecute them. We're not going to honor detainers. We're going to let them out on the street. And of course, what happens when you do that? Ms. Minner is going to talk about that in a few minutes. That's what happens. Take another example. Marvin Morales Ortiz had this long rap sheet, but on September 12, 2025, he's arrested for malicious assault and brandishing a gun. Mr. Descano says, we're not going to prosecute this guy. Sheriff Kincaid says, we're not going to honor the detainer. And they release him on December 16th, 2025. And what happens on December 17th, 2025? He kills someone. That's the consequences of this dumb, stupid, crazy policy. And again, Ms. Minner is going to talk about Stephanie Minner. The chairman talked about Abdul Jallah, who had this 40 past charges, had all kinds of things. This guy had been arrested and charged with multiple crimes, malicious wounding, stealing property, larceny, trespass, disorderly conduct, malicious wounding, 100 involvements with the local police. And as the chairman pointed out, the local law enforcement told Mr. Descano's office, if you let this guy out, he's going to do something bad. It's going to be bad. And sure enough, they were right. And he stabbed and killed someone. That's the consequences. Now, here's the craziest part of all. And the chairman mentioned this. Mr. Descano told us he was going to do it. He told us he was going to do this. The statement I think the chairman read, Mr. Descano's office will take immigration consequences into account when making charging and plea decisions. This is unbelievable. So I want to thank the chairman. The Democrats can say all they want. Well, why are we having another hearing? We're having a hearing on this because this is the dumbest thing we've ever heard. So I want to thank the chairman for this hearing, and I want to thank him for the legislation that he sponsored. This committee's already passed. Sanctuary Jurisdiction Shutdown Act of 2026. And hopefully that's going to be passed in the full House soon. Love to get that into law so we can stop what's going on in Fairfax County. With that, I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Raskin, for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to all of our witnesses. I would especially like to thank Ms. Minter for coming today. There's no greater pain than the pain of losing your child. And so I thank you for having the strength and the courage to speak publicly and to appear before us about all of these matters today. I also want to thank the busy public officials from Virginia, Sheriff Kincaid and Commonwealth's Attorney Descano. We know how busy your schedules are, and we thank you for coming to be part of this process. I have family in Virginia. Not everybody in my family is in Maryland. I once spent a summer in Richmond, Virginia, and I feel somehow like I'm back in Virginia with all these great Virginians here. And we're on a mission of analyzing Virginia law and public policy today. This hearing would probably be better taking place in Richmond before the General Assembly, because we're doing a deep dive into the prosecutorial and jail policy decisions of one county, Fairfax County, which was recently ranked, I noted, by the Major Cities Chiefs Association as the safest county of its size in the entire United States of America. So its people, its elected officials certainly do not deserve the contempt and the derision of this committee. If we were going to superintend and scrutinize the actions taking place within the government of Virginia, perhaps we should be looking at the recent decision by the Virginia State Supreme Court to overturn the express will of the people of Virginia in redistricting their congressional districts. But that investigation into an episode of extreme judicial activism might not suit the ideological purposes of the majority quite so much. The ranking member has done an excellent job of providing an overview of the problems and limitations with the particular conception of this hearing. What we have on one side is a massively funded federal bureaucracy, which just got $175 billion last year, accomplished by slashing funds for Medicaid, children's health insurance, rural hospitals, and so on. DHS now has 250,000 employees and a budget larger than that of 150 countries on earth. It has over 80,000 sworn officers, more than the number of police officers, check this out, in New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, Washington, D.C., Las Vegas, and Dallas combined. And yet, despite this massive bureaucracy and this awesome budget, the administration is trying to blame the problems in immigration law and policy over which the people of Fairfax County have no control, other than as citizens voting for representatives in Congress, trying to blame these local jurisdictions like the sheriff's office, whose annual budget is not $175 billion, but if the internet is correct, I just looked it up, is $85 million, which is much less than 1,000th of the Homeland Security budget. And yet, the federal government or Congress, rather than actually engaging in the process of studying and passing comprehensive immigration reform, prefers to bully and scapegoat local jurisdictions which are trying to deal with the failures of federal policy. Look, ICE and the Department of Homeland Security have a job to do, and they should do it. And they should do it without violating the law. They should do it without violating the Constitution. They should do it without killing U.S. citizens like Renee Good and Alex Preddy, but they have a job to do. And the government of Fairfax County has a job to do. And these public officials have a job of enforcing the criminal laws of Virginia as chosen by the people of Virginia within all of the constraints of state and federal law. Now, as I understand it, and this is what I'm interested in because I'm not familiar with what is taking place in Fairfax County or in Virginia, but as I understand it, ICE can come and pick up undocumented prisoners for a period of days or weeks before they are discharged. And this has happened before, and the local and state government, contrary to what we just heard, cooperates fully with the federal government in these cases. The idea that they don't cooperate is just wrong. ICE can come and pick them up before their point of discharge, and as I understand it, and I want to hear more about this, they can pick them up at the point of discharge. But Fairfax County, as I understand it, takes the position it cannot hold prisoners beyond the length and duration of their lawful sentence. And I want to hear about that. But I'm curious, why can ICE not pick up, with its massive resources, why can they not pick up the prisoners while they are still being held? Or right before they're about to be released, or at the point of discharge? I don't really understand that. And then, again, I understand everybody is eager to beat up on Fairfax County for some reason, but in terms of the specific terrible case we're going to talk about today, we're going to hear about this Abdul Jallo, the Sierra Leone national who's accused of brutally murdering Ms. Minter's daughter, Stephanie. He was actually in ICE custody from 2018 through 2019 during the first Trump administration before they released him back into the public. As I understand it, I want to get to the bottom of that report. Why was he not removed back to Sierra Leone when the Trump administration held him in 2018 and 2019? That is a critical question that I have in terms of trying to define responsibility, if all of this is just a blame game that we're engaged in. It would be far more meaningful for us to be talking about comprehensive immigration reform. I think that's what Americans and Virginians are looking to Congress for, not to be scrutinizing and demonizing particular cities or counties around the country, which does not strike me as a very productive exercise. Nonetheless, I'm delighted to hear from all of our witnesses here, and I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Without objection, all other opening statements will be included in the record, and we'll now hear from today's witnesses. We have with us today Ms. Cheryl Minter. She's a lifelong Virginia resident. She's the mother of Stephanie Minter, the young woman who was victimized by these sanctuary policies. We have with us the Honorable Stacy Kincaid, who serves as sheriff for Fairfax County, Virginia. She has 35 years of experience working for the Fairfax County Sheriff's Office, a graduate of Langley High School in McLean, Virginia. Sheriff Kincaid received her bachelor's degree in political science and criminal justice from the Frostburg State University in 1987. We have the Honorable Stephen Descano, who serves as a Commonwealth's attorney for Fairfax County, Virginia. He served in this role since January of 2020. Mr. Descano earned his undergraduate degree from West Point and his JD from Temple University. Mr. Sean Kennedy is president of Virginians for Safe Communities, a public safety and victims' rights advocacy nonprofit, and sits on the Fairfax County Criminal Justice Advisory Board as an appointee of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors. He's a graduate of the University of California at Berkeley and earned a master's degree in history from the University of Cambridge. Professor Jane Stover is a professor at the University of California Irvine School of Law, where she directs the Domestic Violence Clinic and the UCI Initiative to End Family Violence. Professor Stover earned a bachelor's degree in English from the University of Kansas in 2000. She completed her JD at Harvard in 2003 and earned an LLM from Georgetown University in 2008. Mr. David Beer is the Director of Immigration Studies at the Cato Institute. He has a BA in Political Science from Grove City College in Pennsylvania. We have with us the Honorable Jason Mayores, who served as Virginia Attorney General from 2021 to 2025 and previously served in the House of Delegates. He earned a bachelor's degree in business administration from James Madison University in 1998 and earned his JD from the College of William and Mary in 2005. I want to welcome all of today's witnesses, thank them for appearing, and we'll begin by swearing you in. Would you please rise and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge and information and belief, so help you God? Let the record reflect the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you, and you may be seated. We know that your written testimony will be entered in the record in its entirety. Accordingly, we'll ask that you summarize your testimony in 5 minutes, and we'll begin with Sheriff Kincaid.
Good morning. Chairman McClintock, Ranking Member Jayapal, and distinguished members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. My name is Stacey Ann Kincaid, and I am the Sheriff of Fairfax County, Virginia. I was sworn in as a deputy sheriff in 1987, and I worked my way through the ranks of my agency, serving in every division with distinction. After achieving the rank of captain, I ran for sheriff in 2013 and have since been reelected 3 times with overwhelming majorities. As sheriff, it's been an honor to serve Fairfax County. The safety and security of Fairfax County has been my absolute priority for the past 38 years. I entered law enforcement to serve my community and to help protect the vulnerable. I believe all those that commit crimes should be held accountable, and I sympathize with all victims of crimes. I am proud of the role my agency plays in the Fairfax County criminal justice system by ensuring the safe and orderly administration of justice. Simply put, the justice system comes to a halt without Fairfax County Sheriff's Office. We are tasked with serving every document issued by our court system, including protective orders and subpoenas. We are responsible for providing security to a courthouse and ensuring the safety of hundreds of thousands of courthouse visitors every year, including judges, victims, and witnesses. We operate a secure and humane adult detention center, and we hold certifications from the American Correctional Association, the Virginia Law Enforcement Professional Standards Commission, the Virginia Department of Corrections, and the National Commission on Correctional Health Care. In addition to our accreditation, I am proud of the groundbreaking, nationally recognized programs that run daily in my jail. These efforts are critical to reducing recidivism and making our communities safer. The functions of my agency are carried out daily to ensure the safe and orderly administration of justice in Fairfax County. My agency is not staffed for, budgeted for, or mandated to perform the duties of the federal government. My operating budget is approved by state and local government and is allotted specifically to carry out state and local mandated functions, maintaining a safe and secure detention center, serving civil process, and ensuring the safety of the courthouse. It is simply not the job of the Fairfax County Sheriff's Office to engage in federal immigration enforcement. Despite this, we work with ICE in significant ways. We treat them like every other law enforcement agency we interact with. They are allowed into our facility at any time. They are notified of every undocumented immigrant booked into our jail, and they know their location. If there is an individual they want to take custody of, they can do so by obtaining a judicial warrant, calling to ask when the individual will be released, tracking the individual's court date, or taking custody of the individual up to 5 days prior to their release. When ICE does call, we even coordinate high-risk transfers with ICE to ensure their safety. We have no problem with ICE conducting its lawful business, but it is their business to conduct, not ours. Fairfax County is one of the top 50 most diverse counties in the entire nation. Over 30% of Fairfax County's population is foreign-born, and over 40% speaks a language other than English at home. I am the sheriff for each one of these residents of Fairfax County, no matter their national origin, native language, and citizenship status. Ensuring trust between the community and my agency is a key component of effective law enforcement. to encourage all victims to put their faith in law enforcement and report crimes. A clear separation between local law enforcement and federal immigration authorities is of vital importance. Local law enforcement must offer a safe place for victims and witnesses to cooperate without fear of consequences. This is the only way to hold violators accountable of the law. Any violent crime or a crime against children is a tragedy. Unfortunately, we live in a time when such tragedies are used for political gain. It is easy to point fingers at a time of sadness and crisis and to look for blame for a terrible outcome. Even when everyone in the criminal justice system does their job, terrible people will do terrible things. We are doing our job by following the law and will continue to do so. Hopefully, the other agencies involved will do their jobs as well. I look forward to continuing this conversation with anyone who wishes to find real solutions devoid of politics. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Descano.
Chairman McClintock, Ranking Member Jayapal, Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Raskin, and distinguished members of this subcommittee. As a West Point graduate, federal prosecutor, and now the Commonwealth's attorney for Fairfax County, Virginia, I've devoted my life to public service and public safety. I was the first in my family to graduate from college, and I was inspired by West Point's credo of providing a lifetime of selfless service to the nation. I was first elected as Commonwealth's attorney in 2019 on a promise to adopt smart on-crime policies that prioritize the prosecution of violent crime. I'm proud of what we have accomplished. Fairfax County is one of the safest large communities anywhere in the country. The public safety of Fairfax County motivates all my work. Our office has successfully prosecuted thousands of cases, including high-profile murders, sexual assaults, and other serious offenses. We've worked with our law enforcement partners to more effectively prosecute gun crimes. We expanded a diversion program for struggling veterans, and we spearheaded bipartisan statewide reforms to better protect child victims and witnesses in partnership with a Republican governor. Even in safe communities, though, crime does happen, like the tragic murder of Stephanie Minter, whose mother, Cheryl, is here today. Ms. Minter, I am deeply sorry for your loss. And I say that not only as a prosecutor, but as a parent of a daughter. I am sorry for what you are having to endure. And I promise that my office is doing everything we can to prosecute the man responsible. I've been asked to testify today about my office's policies. I welcome any conversation about how to reduce and prevent violence. Unfortunately, I expect some will instead promote a false narrative that gets us no closer to real solutions that Americans deserve. Let me be absolutely clear. My office does not provide sanctuary or safe harbor to undocumented immigrants. In fact, we routinely prosecute immigrants who commit crimes, and we will continue to do so. Our approach to prosecution of crime has helped make Fairfax County one of the safest jurisdictions of its size in the country. Last year, we had far fewer homicides than in almost any other major jurisdiction in the United States, including in states that many members of this subcommittee represent. Serious violent crime in Fairfax County is also lower than that of most other large jurisdictions. And Fairfax residents know it's safe. A Washington Post poll found that 94% of Northern Virginia residents reported feeling safe from crime in their neighborhood. And the citizens of Fairfax County have weighed in by re-electing me with 77% of the vote. My office also works with our federal partners to prosecute crimes. And like many state and local prosecutors, my office has a policy of not assisting ICE with federal civil immigration enforcement. We do not have the budget or personnel to enforce federal civil immigration law, and it is simply not our job. We handle 15,000 criminal cases each year, with just 52 full-time attorneys and a limited budget. Our policy of not diverting our resources to federal immigration enforcement also makes our community safer. 3 in 10 residents in Fairfax County are immigrants. When crimes occur, we need victims and witnesses, including members of our immigrant communities, to report those crimes and come to court to testify. If victims and witnesses believe my office will report them or their neighbors to ICE, they will not trust us, and they will not provide the testimony we need to obtain convictions and get justice. It is justice that my office is now seeking by prosecuting the defendant, Abdul Jallo, in the tragic murder of Stephanie Minter. The system failed Ms. Minter, and we should all look for ways we can prevent tragedies like this in the future. That starts with understanding the facts. The defendant was well known by ICE as early as 2018. when ICE held him in custody for nearly 2 years during the first Trump administration, only to release him into the community. After that, my office worked closely with law enforcement to prosecute him and obtain convictions for his crime wherever possible and despite challenges in those cases. We are fully committed to holding the defendant accountable in this case. As a local prosecutor, I will continue to focus on my job prosecuting defendants who commit crimes in Fairfax County. In carrying out that role, my office makes case decisions based on the law, the evidence in the case, the interests of the victim, and in service of seeking justice and keeping our community safe. Thank you for having me, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll next hear from the former Attorney General of the state of Virginia, the Honorable Jason Miyares.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member, members of the subcommittee, before I say anything else, I want to acknowledge the woman seated with us today, Ms. Cheryl Minter, the mother of Stephanie. She has agreed to share her story with this committee, and there's no one braver in this room. I will let her speak to what she has lost. But what I want to give you is the context, because what happened to Stephanie did not have to happen in this vacuum. Now, I come to the immigration issue personally. My mother fled communist Cuba, literally penniless and homeless, and not knowing where her next meal was going to come from. She came to this country legally, stood in line, filled out the forms, and did everything the right way because she believed in the rule of law and the promise of America. She left behind everything because she knew she wanted to come here the right way. That's what legal immigration looks like. I'm the son of a legal immigrant. I believe in immigration deeply. But what I do not believe in, what I cannot accept, is a system that extends preferential treatment to those who break our laws at the direct expense of the American citizens whose laws are supposed to protect. And in Fairfax County, Virginia, that is precisely what happened. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. Cheryl will tell you about Stephanie. But members of this committee, I want you to understand that Stephanie Minter is not an isolated tragedy. She is the most recent and visible name in a documented and ongoing pattern of preventable crimes, a pattern with a single common cause, the sanctuary policies of Fairfax County. In December 2025, a man was shot and killed inside his own home in Reston one day after Marvin Fernando Morales Ortez, a criminal illegal alien from El Salvador, was released from jail despite an active ICE detainer. He had prior arrest for aggravated assault of a police officer. Fairfax refused to hold him. He killed a man the very next day. A single phone call from Fairfax to ICE would have saved this man's life. In November 2024, a woman was raped on a hiking trail in Herndon, Virginia, just days after her attacker was released from jail following a felony assault charge reduction made without ever consulting the police. The ICE detainer was ignored. She became the next victim. A 4-year-old girl was nearly abducted in the middle of the night by an illegal alien who broke into her bedroom. Charges were reduced progressively over 18 months down to a misdemeanor, then dropped entirely. In July 2024, 2 illegal aliens stabbed a man to death at a park in Oakton. ICE had lodged multiple detainers on one of the suspects that Fairfax County had refused to honor. He was released back to the community. Then he killed. In the last several weeks, girls as young as 13 were groped repeatedly in the hallways of a Fairfax County high school by an illegal alien enrolled as a student at age 19. ICE asked that he be held. Fairfax refused. Same county, same prosecutor, same policy, over and over again. Members, this is not incompetence. This is not coincidence. This is policy. Commonwealth's Attorney Descano publishes it on his own website. His office's formal written policy states that prosecutors shall, whenever possible, make charging and plea decisions that, quote, limit or avoid immigration consequences. That's not prosecutorial discretion. That is discrimination against American citizens in favor of those here illegally who commit additional crime. That is why the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund petitioned the Department of Justice, which early this month has opened a civil rights investigation into Mr. Descano's office, arguing that his policies violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Let me be clear about the law. Immigration is not a shared power with states. It belongs exclusively to the federal government. And federal law expressly prohibits state and local governments from restricting communication with federal immigration authorities. Fairfax County's policies do exactly that. This is not non-cooperation. This is a deliberate choice to put a violent criminal back on the street. We know what works because Virginia proved it under Governor Glenn Youngkin. His Executive Order 47 established a state immigration task force. Within 8 weeks, over 130 gang members were picked up, including the East Coast leader of MS-13 living freely in Prince William County. He was captured. Virginia was called the national model. Our new governor, Spanberger, dismantled it. Her first day in office, she signed Executive Order 1, ending state cooperation with ICE just 19 days before Stephanie Minter was killed. She now has a bill on her desk that would prohibit every jurisdiction in Virginia from cooperating with ICE. I think we all know what she will do. Government's first and most fundamental duty is to protect the people it governs. Sanctuary policies represent a catastrophic and willful failure of that duty. My mother came to this country because she believed the law would protect her. Cheryl Minter believed the same thing. Stephanie Minter deserved the same thing. And Virginians are paying the price. I'm asking this committee to make this stop. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I welcome the committee's questions.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll next hear from Professor Stover.
Chairman, Ranking Member, and distinguished members, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Jane Stover, and I'm a law professor at the University of California Irvine School of Law, having first taught at Georgetown and American, directing domestic violence clinics for over 20 years now. Today's hearing was prompted by an unthinkable tragedy, and I extend my deepest condolences to Ms. Cheryl Minter for the loss of her daughter, Stephanie Minter. All victims deserve safety and justice, and many have been failed by the systems that purport to help them. I'll be direct, though. Focusing on immigration enforcement as the solution to violence against women is rooted in false narratives, not facts. Contrary to the premise of this hearing, sanctuary policies aren't obstacles to public safety. They're essential to it. Study after study, including by criminologist Sharis Kubrin, shows that immigrants commit fewer crimes. And law enforcement leaders have warned that when survivors fear the police, crimes go unreported and communities become less safe. As co-chair of my county's domestic violence death review team, I can assure you, preventing abuse prevents fatalities. Policies that allow survivors to seek help without fear, to call the police without fear, save lives and improve community safety. I urge this committee to focus on the real solutions to preventing and responding to violence against women, because I see my clients' safety further jeopardized now. Immigrant women in the United States face a lifetime risk of domestic violence as high as 49.8%. That's 3 times the national average. And 60% of immigrant women married to U.S. citizens experience immigration-related abuse. Survivors need protection but face a catch-22. Remain in danger or risk deportation. Immigration enforcement has exponentially increased as Congress has allocated $170 billion and plans to add $70 billion more. ICE agents have daily arrest targets and are now empowered to stop, arrest, and detain people on the basis of race, language, location, and employment. And immigrant survivors are being swept up. In this context, the Alliance for Immigrant Survivors surveyed over 170 advocates and attorneys nationwide. Their findings are alarming. Over 3/4 of immigrant survivors have concerns about contacting the police. 70% fear attending any court hearings, and half ultimately chose not to contact the police or to go to court for abuse. In Virginia, Fairfax County law enforcement report rising numbers of victims withdrawing complaints. Survivors are avoiding courthouses, food banks, prenatal care, and shelters due to ICE raids, and are arranging for third parties to take custody of their children should they be deported. At the same time, legal protections are being dismantled. Over 30 years ago, Congress enshrined protections for immigrants in the Violence Against Women Act with bipartisan support, and then passed the Victims of Trafficking and Violence Protection Act. But today, survivors with pending and even approved petitions are being detained and removed. USCIS backlogs of VAWA self-petitions and life-saving TNU visas compound the crisis, with U visas taking over a decade to grant now. One of my clients married a U.S. citizen, but fled life-threatening abuse during pregnancy, only to be ordered removed unless she could prove successful adjudication of her VAWA self-petition in 1 month's time. But USCIS processing times are over 4 years currently. We expedited her case and await the decision on appeal. She is not the danger this administration or this hearing purport to address, yet she's been made a target, and I shudder to think what would happen if she didn't have an attorney. To seriously address crime victim safety, I respectfully urge Congress to 1, reject Section 287G agreements, which harmfully entangle local police with federal immigration enforcement, to prohibit enforcement actions at courthouses, abuse shelters, and medical facilities, the places we want people to seek help. 3, to bar ICE from detaining or removing individuals with pending survivor-based claims, as was Congress's original intent. 4, to restore VAWA, U, and T visa protections and public benefits, to fund USCIS staffing, and increase the annual caps. Finally, in contrast to the hundreds of billions of dollars for immigration enforcement, $200 million in federal victim services grants is sitting unspent, which should be immediately distributed to provide life-saving services to survivors in those organizations, including in Virginia. Please stay focused on survivor safety and act with urgency to restore and strengthen vital safeguards. Thank you.
Thank you. Next chair for Mr. Beer.
Chairman McClintock, Ranking Member Jayapal, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. For half a century, the Cato Institute's research has shown that people, whatever their ancestry, background, or birthplace, can thrive in a free society. Our research finds that immigrants, legal and illegal, work at higher rates, generate more income and taxes, and have reduced the national debt by $14.5 trillion over the last 30 years. Immigrants improve public safety by reducing violent crime rates, meaning that you are less likely to become a victim. Fairfax highlights this reality. About half the county's residents are immigrants or children of immigrants. Its household income is double the national average. Its murder rate is less than half the average. If illegal immigrants in Fairfax were their own city, they'd have a lower homicide rate than 90% of America's largest cities and lower than the country's homicide rate overall. Nationwide, illegal immigrants are half as likely to commit serious crimes for which they're serving time as US-born Americans. Despite all this, Congress refuses to allow most would-be immigrants to come legally, which leads to illegal immigration. Just 3% of all the people seeking permanent legal status in the United States were approved in 2024. That was before the current administration banned a majority of the legal immigrants previously allowed to come, including half of all the spouses of US citizens. It has cut legal immigration twice as much as it has cut illegal immigration. At the same time, it terminated legal status for over 2 million immigrants who were already here, creating 4 times as many illegal immigrants as it has deported. America's cities must manage the fallout from this sabotaged system. Many have decided not to volunteer their cops, jails, and resources to DHS. DHS doesn't like that. But under our Constitution, cities and states don't take orders from the feds. And thank James Madison for that. Because we all know we wouldn't want the feds to dictate environmental policy, gun policy, or COVID policy to the states. If you want Fairfax to change its policies, you gotta convince them. The first step would be to give up on the mass deportation fantasy. About 1 in 5 Fairfax residents is someone who could be deported or who lives with them. It would destroy neighborhoods, rip Americans away from their spouses, parents, friends, families, customers, employees, employers, nurses, nannies, and teachers. Let me be clear. Non-citizens who harm Americans should be arrested, convicted, and deported. I think cities can help with that, but deportation is DHS's job. Indeed, you all passed the Laken-Riley Act in 2025 to require DHS to immediately take custody of people charged with violence or a theft. DHS is ignoring that law. It has deprioritized threats to focus on easy targets. They aren't tracking down the serious criminal fugitives like the monster who killed Stephanie Minter. Instead, DHS agents are racially profiling Americans at Home Depots, arresting spouses of U.S. citizens at green card interviews, beating parents of U.S. Marines and dragging legal immigrants